Mayor and the Deputy Mayor are unfortunately not available for today's council meeting. Therefore, in accordance with section 12.2 of the meeting regulations, the councillors present are required to elect one councillor to chair today's meeting. As the method of election is not prescribed within the regulations, it will occur by securing a simple majority in favour of one councillor present. Where a simple majority is not secured, a second vote will be taken. If the chairperson is not elected during a second round of voting, a drawing of lots will occur and the chair will then be elected. Once the chairperson has been elected by councillors present, the meeting will then formally commence. With that, can I please ask for a nomination or nominations for a councillor to chair today's council meeting? Councillor Harris.
Councillor Danny Gibson.
Councillor Gibson has been nominated. Councillor Gibson, do you accept the nomination? Councillor Gibson has accepted the nomination. Is there any further nominations for chair for today's meeting? There being no further nominations, can I please have a raise of hands to support the nomination of Councillor Gibson? And that is carried and present, and I appoint Councillor Danny Gibson to chair today's council meeting. Thank you, Councillor Gibson.
Just a point of order, Chair, the CEO. Should there have been a seconder of that nomination?
Thank you, Councillor Walker. We don't need a formal motion. We simply need the nomination, but I thank you for the question.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Let's open the meeting at 1:02. Informally opening the meeting, we note apologies from Councillor Garwood and Councillor Mackenzie. We also note that an audio-visual recording is being made of this meeting. All persons attending the meeting are to be respectful of and considerate towards other persons attending the meeting. Language and conduct at the meeting that could be perceived as offensive, defamatory or threatening to a person attending the meeting or listening to the recording is not acceptable. Welcome to members of the public and those listening online, as well as our staff, to the first council meeting of the year. In opening the meeting, the first formal council meeting of the year. In opening the meeting, I'll provide an acknowledgement of country. We acknowledge Tasmanian Aboriginal people as traditional custodians of this land. We pay respect to elders past and present as they hold the memories, traditions, culture and hope for generations to come. We recognise and value Aboriginal histories, knowledge and lived experiences, and we commit to being culturally inclusive and respectful in our working relationships with Aboriginal people. Let's move to item 2 of the agenda, the acknowledgements. First of all, I would like to sincerely acknowledge all of our staff who worked so hard over the Christmas break. Councillors had a significant break, a leave of absence, and it was our staff who worked very hard continuing to run the organisation on public holidays and during the closed break. So CEO, we thank you and the staff for continuing to work so hard over the council break. I'd also like to take this opportunity to take a moment on this National Day of Mourning to provide an update. On December 14, hundreds of Jewish Australians had gathered in an iconic spot in our beautiful country. They had come together to reaffirm their faith's message of the victory of light over darkness. For everyone mourning loved ones and friends, and for proud and courageous Jewish Australians as part of our Australian community, and for every Australian affected by the events that happened on December 14, we recognise that today has been declared a National Day of Mourning. Flags are flying at half-mast, and Australia will remember the 15 innocent people whose lives and futures were so cruelly stolen from them on that terrible evening. As Australia pauses to remember, we will reaffirm our national determination for light to triumph over darkness. Our flags are flying at half-mast to honour the 15 innocent people whose lives were taken that night. This evening, Town Hall, like so many monuments, and iconic places around the country will be lit in white. And at 7 p.m, our town hall clock will toll 15 times, finishing just before the 7:01 official minute of silence. Today we remember not only the victims, but also the courage and quick actions of community members, police and first responders. We come together with a shared commitment that light must triumph over darkness. And we also acknowledge and extend our thoughts to our own Launceston and Tasmanian Jewish community. Let the message that light will win, a gathering of unity and remembrance, guide us. Given we will not be together at 7:01 this evening, let us now pause for a minute of silence as we think of those impacted by that terrible event. Thank you so much. Item 3 on the agenda, declaration of interest. Are there any pecuniary or non-pecuniary declarations from councillors? Councillor McMahon.
Thank you. Item 11.1, flood-levy protected areas, specific area plan.
Thank you, Councillor McMahon. 11.1. Councillor Kai.
Same.
11.1. Great. Thank you so much. Okay, we have a number of people who have joined us in the gallery. It's wonderful to welcome you. The opportunity to make comment on agenda items. You would have seen and heard from Lorraine as you entered. The opportunity to comment before we consider an item. You're asked to move to the microphone at the end of the table. You're asked to provide your name and your address, and you're able to speak for 2 minutes, either for or against the recommendation. You're not to ask questions or enter into debate with councillors or council officers. Your statement is not to be defamatory, inappropriate or abusive, or to be intended to embarrass any person, including councillors or council officers. I may direct you to stop speaking if you do not follow these rules, or if your statement repeats points that have already been made. Let's move to item 5, council workshops. 5.1, council workshop report, 15th of January 2026. Someone please to the confirmation of the minutes. Getting ahead of myself. Let's go back to the confirmation of the minutes. Item 4, thank you. And everything that is contained within that. Someone to move the motion. Thank you, Councillor Palmer. Seconded, Councillor Britton. Anyone to speak to the motion and the points as listed? You'll note that there are some extended points there in 2, 3 and 4 and 5. Councillor Palmer, do you wish to close? All those in favour, raise their hand. That is all councillors present and the motion is carried. Thank you. Let's go to item 5, council workshops. 5.1, meeting held on the 15th of January 2026. Someone to move that item. Thanks, Councillor Harris. Seconder. Thank you, Councillor Priest. Councillor Harris, do you wish to speak to the item?
I've got to turn the right microphone on. Just briefly to say that it's worthwhile having a look at what we have been talking about in workshops so that people have an understanding of what council are doing in advance of having a meeting like this. We did have a presentation about the play space for the Birchall's building development, which we will talk about later, no doubt, but not in this meeting, but also the local heritage precincts covering both Newstead Crescent and Main Street. So it is worthwhile for us to go out and have a look at these areas as councillors to make sure we understand what is going on, but also to bring to the attention of those residents that they could be impacted by what we are considering, and this is just advance notice for them to say this is now on our radar. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Harris. Seconder, Councillor Priest, do you wish to speak to the item? Does any councillor wish to speak to item 5.1? Councillor Harris, anything further to say? We'll put the motion to the vote. All those in favour raise their hand. That is all councillors present. The motion is carried. Thank you. There are no councillors' leave of absence application. There are no community reports at item 7. Let's move to item 8, questions by members of the public. 8.1, questions on notice by members of the public. 8.1.1 from Robin Smith concerning parking and the parking action plan. The response is noted there. 8.1.2, question from Robin Smith concerning graffiti and e-scooter rules and the council website. 8.1.3, question from Robin Smith, apprentice numbers at the organisation. 8.1.4, Robin Smith, parking infringement discounts. 8.1.5, Andrew Whitehead, cost of Ikeda trip. 8.1.6, Robin Smith, permits for protesting and the number of permits issued. 8.1.7, Robin Smith, permits for the provision of social services. Questions without notice by members of the public. The opportunity for members of our public to ask a question. Mr. Ganninan, I have you listed.
Have you? Oh, sorry, I missed you at Christmas time, so hope everyone had a great Christmas and New Year. Ian Ganninan, 20 Pine Avenue, Newstead. Just a couple of questions around the budget. I went searching on the website and I can't find anything on there in relation to a mid-year budget, your overs and unders and adjustments for the coming 26-27 budget. As I said, awfully concerned about the rate that you charged increased last year, so much out of kilter with the 4 other cities in Tasmania. So I wonder whether I can be assisted with that information or where I can find it.
Thanks, Mr. Ganninan. One of the initiatives of the CEO since he joined us has been ensuring that each month a monthly report is provided. So CEO will take note and be able to provide the exact place in the relevant minutes from the last 6 months so that you can have a look at those figures. And we would expect that in a coming meeting very soon that we will consider the next month's finances.
Sorry, I was looking for the 6 months previous, the 6 months going forward, and any adjustments to that budget that will have effect on the 26-27 results.
Yep.
Anyway, that's what I was after. I can talk to the General Manager about it later, but
sure,
I would have thought that would be standard practice here. But anyway.
Thank you. I'll just pause there. It is definitely the practice that we've adopted in recent months. CEO, would you like to provide an overview of what we are including in our open minutes?
Thank you, through the Chair, and thank you, Mr. Ganninan. And as always, myself and the Executive Leader of Delivery and Performance are happy to meet with you as we've done previously, and happy to do so again. But the Chair is correct that we do report monthly and have done, particularly for this financial year, all budget movements on a monthly basis rather than waiting for 6 months or every quarter. We prefer to do it monthly. We believe it's certainly far easier for councillors to be across financial data, financial movements, and we believe it's also far more transparent reporting that publicly monthly.
So we know where we're going for June 26. Okay, fantastic. Affecting that also, I keep asking the question about the Queen Victoria Museum. Like, I've had a couple different answers back, one to say that you're looking at forming a new organisation so you can get government funding, etc. The last question, I think back in November, I got an answer back to say nothing's really happening at all. I just think it's unfair that Hobart's getting so much, council's getting so much contribution towards the museum in Hobart, and we're getting $1.5 million a year, and basically the museum's losing $11 million a year, which in turn is falling back onto the ratepayers, and hence the uneven rates compared to other cities. I've asked the question for over 12 months now and don't seem to get any positive answers in regards to that. And as a ratepayer, again, I feel that the council gouged last year with their increase of 5.7%. And I think it's too late for council to sit around the table in May looking at changing the budget at that stage, where that work to me should be done well beforehand, and we should be approaching, the very least, approaching the state government to get an increase on the contribution to the museum.
Thanks, Mr Ganina. Your comments are noted. The sentiment is shared. This council's own strategic plan lists its actions with regard to the QV mag. Advocacy and ensuring that additional funding is secured is part of that strategic plan. I would differ in my understanding of the term losing versus investment, but I would share the same sentiment that we need to do all that we can to bring those costs into a more manageable state, and that is part of our strategic plan.
That's fine, but it's nice to see some action. And just lastly, there's an asset management committee that was formed some time ago. Have they given any report to council on their findings and ongoing work? Or do we wait for 12 months?
Thanks, Mr Ganina. Councillors were informally updated at the last workshop that the work concerning our asset management review is continuing. Some additional assets have been further identified and included in that report, and we look forward to formally considering that document in the not too distant future.
Thanks very much.
Rosalind Ives.
Full name. Good afternoon, everyone. I've got new glasses and I can't see anyone, so please excuse me. And I don't very often come with something written on the back of an envelope. Okay.
Just your suburb for...
I'm from West Launceston, Rosalind Ives. Okay. My question is about the Gorge restaurant and the Gorge generally. I am concerned that the heritage of the Gorge restaurant is, because there's no one in there loving it, it's becoming more and more in need of care. And I was wondering if council have any commitment to opening up the doors and windows and allowing, because something that's as old as that is going to deteriorate quickly. And I know the council is doing work on the building, but I really would like to see some air going through that place. Otherwise, it may be difficult to refurbish and get it back to where it was.
Thanks so much for your question and your ongoing advocacy for the Gorge. It's appreciated. We'll take that on notice and provide a more up-to-date response that will also include where we're at with regard to the renovation and the works and the work that's being undertaken to try and secure a leaseholder for that particular site.
And in relation to that as well, can the community be informed, because there has been a lot of negative comments made about the Gorge restaurant being empty, and I believe it would be wonderful if the media could perhaps put something out about the actual Gorge cultural and history, the heritage values of the Gorge, because I do believe there is a place for council here. And I ask council, would they consider beginning some conversations with the public about the intrinsic values of the heritage values of the Gorge, and not just seeing it as a swimming place and a place for entertainment, because there is far more to it than that we all value, I know. But I would love to see council put their hand out to the public and address some of those issues to do with heritage and cultural values of the Gorge.
Thank you. The answer is yes. There's some great work happening in our tourism strategy and from our events and tourism department, and I think that would be an opportune occasion to share some of that messaging as you indicate.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any additional questions from members of the public who are with us today? Mr Smith.
Thank you, Chair. Robin Smith, Coffee Republic. Question, please. Happy New Year. Question, please. Previously, I'd asked about abuse of parking officers. It was something you recorded and you responded in the period back in February 2025. There have been 127 cases reported of abuse of parking officers in the line of their duty. Then the number for the next period comparable to that was 10, and you explained that you don't seem to record them in the same way, such matters. Two-part question. One, because of the nature of the categories, are you still recording verbal harassment, category of threats, of violence, physical assaults and damage to council property? Would you not have an obligation to record those in some form? I understand it was a trial, but if you've identified a problem, how could council have a duty to its staff and not have a reporting method if the only matters reported are those that you consider to be an exceedingly serious case, which would be the 10 as opposed to perhaps 10 times that? So is that something clear that I've made?
Yeah, I mean, the question was clear last time, and the response was quite an amount of detail was provided at 8.1.1 last time, but specifically based on what you've asked today, let's further investigate that and take that on board as a consideration, and we'll come back with a full response to that question.
The aspect, Chair, is the duty of care. Right?
Of course.
What I'd be looking at. Thank you. I'll leave that. Oh, I'd also say when I arrived, it wasn't possible to say on the form the notice to speak to an item. If I may, I'd like to speak to item 20.3, parking matter, and 22.4, which is the parking bylaw. And I would, those are both at the end of the meeting today. I would return to those.
Thank you. Thanks, Mr. Smith. Are there any additional questions from members of the public? There being none, let's move to item 11, Planning Authority. Under the provisions of the Land Use Planning and Approvals Act of 1993, Council acts as a planning authority in regard to items included in the agenda, items 11, Planning Authority. Specifically, item 11.1, Planning Scheme Amendment, Flood Levy Protected Areas Special Area Plan. I have speakers listed. First speaker listed is Rodney Rawlings. If you'd like to make your way to the microphone. Thank you.
Thank you, Rodney Rawlings, 69 William Street, Launceston. And I have to say, this is a fairly daunting experience to go through here today, not something I thought I'd do. I'm one of the owners of the property at 69 William Street, which has been affected by the new proposed SAP. We acknowledge the need for a plan and a future plan. As a little bit of background, 69 William Street has operated as a gym since 1991, so for 35 years. We've owned it in its current form for the last 22 years, and during that time we've always had the plan to turn it to do a residential multi-storey development there with car parking at the bottom and residents above once the gym has run its course, from want of a better word. We don't believe that we've been adequately consulted during this process. I just wanted to read from the agenda from today on page 592 and item 6. It says the council will engage with community stakeholders, including residents, business owners, environmental groups and Indigenous communities to gather input and ensure a collaborative approach. Well, just to summarise what we've been through in this recent time, we received a letter on the 10th of June of last year about the SAP. We sent in a representation on the 16th of July to council. We received an acknowledgement and we had no further thoughts or consultation from any council member or part of the administration until the 9th of January when we heard about this meeting, and now we are here today. So our building is about partially included in the medium risk and about 30%. It's very hard for us laymen to gauge exactly how much, but about 30% of our building is in the medium risk. So what we're asking is simply to have some consideration for an avenue through planning to be able to allow us to do a residential development there in the future. I'd like to thank councillors for taking our calls and the opportunity to talk today.
Thanks very much, Rod. Can I also make note that before Rodney spoke, the two councillors who declared an interest, those being Councillors Kai and Councillor McMahon, both exited the meeting. Speakers listed for the item. Rod, did you wish? No. Are there any additional speakers to item 11.1? There being no speakers listed, looking for a councillor. Councillor Harris.
Thank you, Chairman. I'd like to move a alternate motion, as has been circulated, which hopefully can be perhaps put up on the screen for everyone, but I will perhaps just read it out for those who are here or listening online. The alternate motion that the recommendation as published in the agenda be altered to include an additional element as follows. Inserted element 4, redraw figure LAU-S17.1 flood risk overlay map to define the boundary between the low and medium risk flood risk precincts to incorporate hazard 1 and hazard 2 classifications, floods within the low flood risk precinct, thereby increasing the proportion of the proposed overlay classified as low risk. Item 2 is to renumber current element 4 as element 5. I'll perhaps leave it at that for someone to second, and then we might go into some discussion and background from our planners.
Thanks, Councillor Harris. The seconder for the alternate motion as outlined there by Councillor Harris. Seconder, Councillor Britton. Thank you. Great. So, Councillor Harris, I think I hear you asking for the planners to provide an overview there.
I'll perhaps start with a question for the councillors, for the planners to perhaps give an overview of what is being proposed by this particular motion, and also the effect of the change, and then also perhaps some of the science behind the change as well, so that people can understand what we are proposing for the amended motion, so that people can hopefully be brought up to speed on what is quite a difficult issue. And I do recognise that for those listening or those not across it, it may seem a rather difficult thing to get your head around. But over to the council officers.
Thanks, Councillor Harris. Senior Leader, City Development, Richard.
So I'll tag team with Erica Deegan on this, because Erica is the modelling expert and I am the planner. So this amendment has been through a significant development over a number of years. It's based on relatively sophisticated flood modelling and some flood management science around categories of flooding and relative severity of flooding. And then we have then applied that to Launceston. So the amendment as proposed to you in the recommendation makes has constructed that to develop high, medium and low hazard bands across the area of the city that is protected by our levy system. Within that construction, there have been some judgment calls about where the hazard bands should lie and what restrictions should apply in each of the hazard bands. So that is implicit in the documents you have before you, and there's documents in the attachments that outline how that's been prepared. Now, in terms of the alternate motion, in discussion with Councillor Harris, there was a view expressed that council officers may have been too conservative in their construction of those models and their application of the planning provisions. And requested that the council officers have a look at what might be able to be done to deal with that. And so over the last period, over the last day, myself and the planning team have had a look at that. and we have provided Councillor Harris some advice about how those provisions could be looked at, and essentially relaxed slightly to allow a bigger envelope for development on the margins of the floodplain. So that forms the basis. It doesn't alter the spatial extent of the flood, but what is being proposed modifies how that floodplain in its entirety is categorised, either low, medium, or high. Is that sufficient detail?
Thank you. It's probably detail that's difficult for people who haven't got a map or otherwise, and I had hoped we might have been able to put the maps up. But for those who have looked at
we probably can put the map up if that's what you'd like.
Yeah, just while you're doing that, just to perhaps give a quick summary, what was sent around as part of the agenda. 3 zones. There was a red zone, which covers those areas that are very likely to flood. There was a edge of that, by and large. There was a yellow zone where it's had a medium risk of flooding, and then there was a green zone which had a low risk of flooding. You could build residential, including multi-dwelling residential, in the low risk, but you couldn't in the medium based on our planning scheme. And so what you have done is, there's a wonderful example I might now throw to you to explain the now red, yellow and green, and how the changes might have taken effect.
The question is, can you show us those on the map?
So this is the 2D representation of what Richard explained. Essentially, what we're taking is considering the way we use flood hazard categories, which is a classification of flood volume and flood depth and flood velocity, and changing the way that we classify our flood risk precincts as part of the amendment. So this is a 2D representation, and I've prepared a couple of maps to look at the spatial variation as well. So it would apply to all of the impacted area differently. So this is the area around Margaret Street, which I think is listed as Western City in the amendment. This is the area around Newstead. I think I just got told to take the microphone with me. This is the eastern side of what we call Launceston City. So you can see as the hill gets steeper around the fringes of the flood, this area gets more narrow. This is coming along the western CBD. So the parcel that the representative spoke to, I believe, is here. So this would be shifting that parcel slightly. And then this is the impact around the Invermay area. So on what we colloquially know as the Invermay Island, you'd be allowed to develop slightly further into what would have previously been the medium hazard band, medium risk band.
Thank you, Erica. Councillor Harris, further question?
Yes, just a little bit more of the background of why this is an important thing for us as a council to consider in regard to the planning scheme, and perhaps a little bit of the history of how we got to this place, particularly in regard to funding of the levies from the federal government.
A brief overview further to what's contained within the detailed report.
So the Launceston has been, since the construction of the levies, we've been recognising that whilst the levies provide some protection for residents, they don't protect you fully against the flood. And as we move forward with climate change and our recent predictions about flooding and the adequacy of the levies, the likelihood of an overtopping event is getting more and more likely, and that trend will continue into the future. Now, in about 2011 or late 2008, 9, 10, the council were in the process of reconstructing their levies. As part of the reconstruction of the levy project, the money that was given to council was made conditional on the fact that we should prevent further intensification in the Invermay Inveresque area. Now, we did that, And largely, the amendment that you have before you today maintains those provisions for Invermay-Inveresk. The problem with the Invermay-Inveresk area is it's only one of 3 levy-protected areas in our city. And so in terms of when we are reviewing those things, because we have areas of the city and areas of Newstead also protected by levies, we need to provide a consistent approach across all those because the risks in those areas are similar to the risks in Invermay. So when we determined to harmonise those and update our provisions into the new format planning scheme, we decided that we would have a common provision across all our levy protected areas. The idea that we had done the heavy lifting, I suppose, in Invermay, we had imposed some restrictions on residential intensification in 2011. It wasn't seen by anyone within the project or within the SES or any of the agencies that we spoke to about winding back those provisions to allow to now encourage residential development in the floodplain. And those provisions then largely translated in slightly different form, but largely translated across all our floodplains. Yeah, the basic principle is that where land is subject to flooding, we're not encouraging residential intensification.
Thanks so much, Senior Leader. Nothing else at this point? No further questions. Councillor Harris, any other questions from councillors? Councillor Harris, as the mover, do you wish to speak?
Yeah, thank you, and I do thank our staff for their explanation because it does give a good background for how we got to where we are and also the process for us moving forward and moving forward to treat landowners fairly and equally, whether the flood doesn't understand whether someone lives in one particular postcode of 7248 or 7250 at Newstead. The flood will simply go where the flood is, and so we really must treat each area the same and our landowners the same. And the minor adjustment that has been made to perhaps increase the size of the low risk area and reduce slightly the size of the medium risk area is made, I believe, on common sense, but also scientific grounds, which I think is very important. And it does allow for other parts of our strategic plan to intensify, encourage inner city living to occur in other areas that would otherwise have been excluded by the original interpretation of the data. So I do thank the staff for their very hard work on a relatively short time frame to come up with what I think is a very good response to my inquiries, and I think provides certainty for all the landowners going forward, and I think that's really important for us as a city. It does still allow some development of medium density on those areas that have been on the fringes of the flood area, but and people will develop and know that because none of those areas at the moment have plans submitted for a medium density residential development. It is very different to how business is treated, because for business the opportunity or the fact that they may be flooded is a business risk, and that is treated differently. But when it is someone's home, and if they are unable to access that home, they could have nowhere else to go. And so it is a very different thing for us to consider. So I'm happy to move the amended motion as it was for us to now send it, and I understand it now goes off to the TASCAT for the planning process for them to consider it as well. So hopefully my fellow councillors will support us around this table. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Harris. Seconder, Councillor Britton.
Thank you very much, Chair. Look, I only stand up to echo Councillor Harris's comments. Thank you very much to the staff for doing the work at what was relatively short notice. It's not often that we want to try and go against anything that the officers do bring towards us, but I do feel comfortable with this slight change to the amendment. As Councillor Harris has already said, it does open up a little bit more opportunity for development around the city. There's a bit of a paradox when it comes to flood mitigation, and that is we wouldn't need any mitigation if we didn't build in a floodplain. Obviously, things like this are designed to try and mitigate against the flood, but and the damages. But we do need to look at it holistically. I think this is only really, I understand the margins get quite big depending on where you look, but this is only a minor sort of amendment around the edges of those margins, and I think it will open up plenty more opportunity for development and for the property owners who are on those fringes and in those margins. And yeah, I just stand to thank the staff, and I'm in support of the motion. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Britton. Any other councillor? Councillor Walker.
Thank you, Chair. Just a couple of questions, if I may, to start. The distinction between Hazard 1 and Hazard 2 classifications, can I get a little explanation of that, and what considerations are taken into that, and I suppose more broadly the distinction between flood impact and flood hazard?
So the flood hazard categorisation is an industry standard that was developed as part of the Australian Rainfall and Runoff guidelines when they were renewed in 2016. So it's a combination of depth and velocity. So Hazard 1 and Hazard 2 floodwaters, which is what we're proposing to move from the medium band into the low risk band, typically was what's classified as nuisance flooding. So it is often no deeper than 0.5 metres and slower moving as well. So that's the hazard bands and the way they've been determined, so industry standard. The way that we're then applying them to risk is where the judgment calls come in. So as part of the amendment, we also looked at risk tolerability of our levy protected community and benchmarked that against the proposed planning provisions. Does that answer the question?
It certainly does. I think the broader
Councillor Walker, your next question.
The broader question around impact and hazard, I suppose. How do we distinguish? Because sometimes they're the same and sometimes they're different.
Yeah, and so we have to remember as well that the flood hazard categorisation that we use in the modelling to determine this is based on one specific flood event. So it's a very specific type of flood, a specific recurrence interval, so what the chance of that flood is happening in any one year, and there will always be floods, bigger, smaller, and they will happen. So again, it's all very judgmenty around how you feel about that. And so what we're saying is if we were to have the flood that we've used to characterise these events, that the flooding at the ground level at those properties would be less than 0.5 metres deep, which is generally classified through the science as safe floodwaters, but very annoying for the people that were to be directly impacted. So it's important to remember as part of the changes to this, as part of the proposed amendment through Councillor Harris, that any planning scheme development that was coming through as part of this will still have to get a flood hazard report, and they will still have to consider all of the impacts of the flooding on that site and on that property.
Thanks, Erica. Councillor Walker.
Another question, if I may. Thank you, Chair. This is a broad brush that's being applied, I suppose, in general to all flood areas, potential flood areas in Launceston. Is there any way that we can potentially modify in the future in regards to precincts? I know that we do modify this area plan in terms of the flood depth that we talk about, because different areas are further above sea level. So we apply different methodology there. Is there any other way that we can apply different precincts or methodologies to specific areas? And I suppose to put that question into context, I recognise that partly is what the flood hazard reporting does, but I think we all know that some areas potentially in Launceston could be affected for many, many months, whereas some areas might only be affected for days or weeks, depending on their location.
Richard.
I think one thing we learned from the foundational reports for this is that if we don't do anything, the situation is going to get progressively worse year on year. So the sea level rise predictions, the rainfall intensity predictions are all making it more likely that over time we will get overtopping events. and they will potentially become more frequent. So the curve of risk is getting higher, more severe over time. So this inevitably, if we get significant flooding in Invermay on a repeated business, we will have to change our planning provisions over time. I think with the understanding we have of modelling of climate change and its impacts, it's unlikely we're going to be getting more lenient and more permissive, particularly in areas subject to high flood hazard. Now, if that curve changes, or if we do other things in our mitigation strategy that reduce the likelihood of flooding, well, then these things are always open to be revisited. But if everything else being equal, the risk is going to keep increasing in flood-prone areas in Launceston over the next 50 years plus. This is about maintaining life in a reasonable, the ability for people to go about their business and live in their houses and run their businesses in our city, but it's cognizant that we don't necessarily want to increase the scale of the exposure of our community to risk, to flood impact. And I think if we carry on intensifying behind the levees, over time, we're putting more of our community in potential, we're exposing them more to the impacts of flooding over time. So these things can always be revisited, but I think from what we understand at this point, the risk is only increasing in the absence of anything else that we might do in our flood mitigation study.
Thanks, Richard. Councillor Walker, any further questions at this point? To speak, Councillor Walker.
Thank you, Chair. I will speak, and thank you for those responses. It reminds me of the meme, the angry man waves his fist at cloud type of thing. Of course, we cannot have an impact on, we can have some minimal impact over time, perhaps on climate change, but the risk of flood is something that I am proud that Launceston Council is taking seriously and is working diligently towards having the appropriate mechanisms in place, and I think everyone would agree with that. It's not the most glamorous subject. I think when Council does try and have these conversations with the community, there is fairly minimal response. I suppose if you live in a floodplain area, you don't want to be reminded of that always, but you know, it's a reality of our lives. And sure enough, there will come a time where we say, oh, well, this is what we thought might happen, and it will have happened. And until it does happen, we think it's never going to happen. And when it does happen, we all say, of course it was going to happen. That's the type of situation we find ourselves in. Now, I appreciate, and I hope I've made it clear to our council officers, that I appreciate the science, the modelling, the work behind this, and the fact that it is bringing Launceston Council forward. We've all seen the impacts elsewhere, and I think we are in somewhat of a fortunate position that there has been precinct work on flood levies. We can't rely upon them, and also that we have resisted until now a major flood impact event. So, having said all that, I suppose from my line of questioning it might be presumed that I feel as though there can be some nuance within all of that, and I might get corrected by people more knowledgeable than myself, but that some areas are going to, if they are flooded, have serious long-term impacts, whereas other areas might recover more quickly. I suppose, in a sense, that's what the modelling is showing when we talk about areas hazard 1 and 2 type classifications. But this applies, again, I suppose, it sticks with the broad brush approach. We're not just looking at changing development regulations around the city side, the south bank of the northeast, but the whole entire catchment to be consistent. I suppose the reason we have this, as has been alluded to, was an agreement with the state government for funding for levies of Inverrest was that we wouldn't allow multiple residential developments behind those levies. And so that is now being applied across the board. And that's where this alternate motion, I suppose, comes from. It says that there are some areas that are on the margins of that. They are valuable areas, they are close to the CBD, they are highly serviced and highly desirable areas in Launceston, and therefore can we find an approach which mitigates the impacts of these changes or this specific area plan. I think this goes somewhat towards it, and I will support this alternate motion today. But I do believe, and I'm sure, work will continue, just as work is continuing, courtesy of the motion from Councillor Britton in terms of flood mitigation for the Launceston area. And if that can turn up some really positive approaches and actions, it may mean that we can relook at this in the next few years, and that would be an amazing thing. I think as a city, we're starting to get to that point where we will be ahead of the game as far as this nation goes, and cities in this nation that are vulnerable to flooding events. We sort of oscillate, I suppose, between being overconfident, we've got the levies, to being extremely vulnerable. And while the debate about climate change may rage, I think we all have to always look at the science and the overwhelming consensus that these events will become more extreme is something that we have to pay good heed good sort of as good advice anyway. So, having said all that, I wouldn't, if I could just finish in 10 seconds, thank you, Chair, I would not like to think that this would encourage development in peripheral areas that are more vulnerable. It may have that effect, and I'm happy to continue this discussion with the community, which I think is an important thing, finding ways to engage the community over this discussion. Thank you,
Thanks,
Chair.
Councillor Walker. Are there any other contributions from around the table? Councillor Harris, do you wish to close?
No, just to say, I think it was the federal government that funded the levies, not the state government from memory. It was both. There you go. And I think this now goes off to the Tas Planning Commission for their approval, so the process doesn't get implemented straight away, but that will give them the opportunity. And is there a public information session as part of that process?
No questions as we conclude, but I'm sure our communication will be consistent as it has been through the process, and we'll take on board what members of the community have indicated. Thank you, Councillor Harris. So just to be very clear on what we are voting on, the council officers provided us with a recommendation that has now been substituted by an alternate motion provided by Councillor Harris, at which we are taking all of the information contained within the original recommendation, and we are simply adding an additional numbered point at point 4 and renumbering what was the last point as point 5. All those councillors in favour of the alternate motion, please raise your hand. Those against? Councillor Pentridge is against. The vote is 7-1. The motion is carried. Thank you to our staff, Anushka and Erica in particular, for your great work there. We now make those councillors who declared an interest will return to the table in Councillors McMahon and Kai as we move to item 11.2, Granville Street Visitor Accommodation, change of use to short-term accommodation. First speaker listed is Isabel Gross-Smith.
Good afternoon, councillors, staff and members of the public. My name is Isabel Gross-Smith. I am the owner and full-time resident of 2/2 Granville Street, the rear property of the property in question, and I speak from direct lived experience of the site. The proposal states that the property meets the planning scheme requirements for privacy. As the rear resident, I can say that this is not accurate. Our garage and front door directly face the kitchen and hallway of 1/2 Granville Street, placing our dwellings in very close proximity. Even with long-term tenants, privacy is an ongoing concern. Short-term accommodation would significantly and negatively impact how we live and use our home. The proposal also claims that the layout minimises interactions and disturbance. In reality, the driveway is shared, extremely narrow and difficult to manoeuvre for those unfamiliar with it. Short-term guests with frequent vehicle movements would likely create regular access issues and could prevent us from entering or exiting our own property. In relation to safety, security and nuisance impacts, responsibility is placed on the owners and occupants. Yet, I've been informed that the property is proposed to be managed by a third-party company. Excuse me. Based on experience, these managers are rarely on site and do not respond promptly. Under Sections 51 and 57 of the Land Use Planning and Approvals Act of 1993, particularly the amenity provision, use must not adversely affect neighbouring properties. Minor but ongoing disturbances are unlikely to be appropriately monitored or enforced. West Launceston is a quiet, community-focused area with a primary school nearby. This proposal also does not address the impacts of short-term accommodation on the broader community, particularly in the context of Tasmania's current housing pressures. Thank you for your time and the opportunity to speak today.
Thank you so much. The next speaker listed is Alison Bates.
Alison Bates, 1 Bairnsdale Road, West Launceston. So good afternoon, Chair, councillors and council management. If this development application is approved, my family home will be landlocked by short-term accommodation rentals on 3 of our 4 property boundaries. We're not against STARs, but rather the fact that we believe we have enough within our small stretch of Basin Road. As I noted in my written response to this DA, currently between 1 and 15 Basin Road, on the odd numbered side of the road only, there are 3 STR properties, meaning just under half of these properties are modern day motels, as I believe these to be, and do not have residents living permanently in them. Upon notification of this DA, I contacted Council's Planning Department and asked if there was some type of register of SDRs in our area, and the reply was no. I understand that you are currently working towards the vision and principles set out in the Launceston Housing Plan 2025 to 2040, in which you state Launceston's housing vision is to deliver homes for every stage of life while protecting what we love and enriching every suburb. If approval is given for yet another STA in the vicinity of our family home, we believe you will be detracting from the vision for Launceston that you are aspiring to. Although this could be considered a simple decision today for just one more STAR in Launceston, I hope you will consider what it means for the landscape and the vibe of our suburbs and city long term. There is a disconnect and isolation involved when you do not have someone living permanently next to you. I understand the economic boost to our economy, but this could come at a risk of creating ghost suburbs if neighbourhoods are overrun by STARs. And I also note this is the main thoroughfare to get to and from the gorge. If another STAR is added to this part of our neighbourhood, our concerns are also for planning of infrastructure into the future in and around our suburb for the long-term residents. Put simply, how prepared are we to protect what we love and enrich every suburb? Thank you.
Thanks, Alison. They are all the speakers I have listed. Are there any additional speakers from the floor who would like the opportunity to speak to the item? Sure. Just come forward with your name and address.
I just wanted to say we're not offshore investors.
Sorry, just your name and address.
Sorry. Helen Bradshaw, Tascon. Yes, so we're not offshore investors. We actually spend half our time here. My daughter and her family moved here 3 years ago now. and we've been coming to visit. We love this place. She's got health problems. One of the 3 children also requires health care. And so we come over and we help out. We love the place, and that is why we decided to purchase. Because of work commitments, we do have to go back to Perth, and we've also got some family there. What we wanted to do was, when we are in Perth for short periods, offer our home up. And talking with the company, our place is ideal for professional workers, like specialist doctors who come in and need accommodation for, say, 3 or 4 weeks. It's not meant to have lots of people who just come for 1 or 2 nights. So that's from our point of view, that's what our aim is. Thank you.
Thanks so much. No additional speakers. Looking for someone to guide the conversation from around the table, councillors. Councillor McMahon, moving as recommended. Thank you. A seconder? Councillor Pentridge. Councillor McMahon, do you wish to speak?
Thank you. If I could just ask a couple of questions to begin with. Is there any legislation restricting the number of SDRs in an area currently?
Thanks so much, Councillor McMahon. Richard?
No.
Thank you. And do any changes within the current legislation sit with the state and not local government?
Thanks, Councillor McMahon. Short stay accommodation legislation.
The statewide planning scheme deals with short-term accommodation approvals, and it sets a series of provisions that are interpreted at the local level. So, yeah, they control the decision-making criteria, and they are exercised at a local level through permits such as the one we have today.
Okay, thank you. I'll sit with that for the moment. Thank
Thanks,
you very much.
Councillor McMahon. Thanks, Richard. Councillor McMahon's reserving a right at this moment. Councillor Pentridge is the seconder.
Look, I'll be supporting this. I'm a little bit lost I think the Speaker adequately explained the reason to try and put more restrictions or bits and pieces. I mean, I think it's just a waste of time. But I think that, and I don't think I need to say much more. The property's been purchased for some very genuine reasons to enable the parent to help with children, and I'll be supporting it. And I think, although I sympathise with our objectives, but I think in light of what's actually going on there, why it's being bought, I don't think there'll be a problem there. So I'll be supporting it, and I'm sorry for the people that I think time will tell. And if it doesn't, if it's used for anything other than what's intended to, I'm sure the matter will come back to us and it'll be addressed. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Pentridge. Appreciate your contribution. Councillor Harris, a question.
Yes, just a question that was raised in my mind regarding the necessity for short-term accommodation. At what point does rental become short-term accommodation? So if I let my property out for a month or 6 weeks, is that short-term, or is that just a normal rental that I don't have to get council permission for? I'm not sure where this sits. I do understand that they're applying for it, but we have heard that there's not the intention for them to be renting it on a nightly basis, shall we say, but a more longer-term doctor type filling in for a number of weeks, as often happens in the medical profession.
Thanks, Councillor Harris. I think it's important for us to note that the use and however long the people are choosing to stay and the mechanisms of the short stay aren't things that we can consider or take on board. Whilst we've heard the representation and that's appreciated, that's not part of our decision-making matrix. But the question, regardless, with regard to what delineates short-term accommodation from a standard rental is an appropriate question. Do we know those criteria?
I'm not aware of any specific case law that might determine it. I think in practice we've used 3 months as a. So if you rent a place for 6 months on a tenancy agreement, you wouldn't be. We wouldn't, as council planning team, consider you a short stay. Anything longer than 3 months. If you are turning people over on a more regular frequency, we would be looking towards visitor accommodation, I think.
Thanks, Richard. To speak, Councillor Walker.
Thank you, Chair. I do stand. I won't be supporting this, and I will suggest that if this is not successful, I shall move an alternate motion to refuse, based on the very basic 8.3.2 of visitor accommodation provision. That the visitor accommodation is not for strata lot that is part of a strata scheme, where another strata lot within that strata scheme is used for residential use. Of course, it relies on performance criteria, and now you're all being asked, as well as our planning officers being asked, does this impact on shared access and common property? Does this have an undue impact on the people that live there? Now, if you or I had bought a house in a strata scheme, we might reasonably expect that there would be different uses next door. But we certainly might have had different thoughts if we knew that the house next door was rented, or if the house next door was already an Airbnb. So circumstances have changed. Now, this is part of the reason why we have a strata board, we have strata rules and things like that. I think there are gaps in the law because certainly council does not have a lot to do with maintaining strata relationships. That's for the owners of the buildings. But nonetheless, we do have provisions within our planning scheme that set aside strata titles differently than if someone had bought a single titled property and had chosen to hand that over to short-term accommodation. We certainly can't suppose that it is going to be used long-term for professionals. Indeed, as our chair points out, we're not here to discuss that today. How often, who rents it, whatever that may be. Quite simply, our choice is between approving this or having some belief that under 8.3.2, the residents of that location in that strata title property is going to have undue impacts. And I certainly believe that they do. And I certainly believe that anyone else who is in a similar situation would have those the potential for those same impacts. It may never happen, that's true. They might never notice a thing for the next 5 years. It might be a wonderful situation, but I think on the balance of probability, that won't be the case. Having looked at the property, having seen the shared access driveway, having seen the proximity of the buildings, I'm sure there will be an impact. I can't be certain, I suppose, none of us can, but we certainly can't be certain that there won't be an impact either. That's the question you have to ask yourselves and come up with an answer today. I think there are many examples where Airbnb is not going to have that impact. Certainly when it's not a strata titled property, you're not going to have that impact. But I think we all concern ourselves more generally with the impacts of increased amounts of Airbnbs. Again, we're not here to discuss that today. I know I did ask a question at the end of last year as to what council could do, practically speaking, to have some control over the Airbnb market. I know the state government is also looking at imposing a levy on Airbnbs. So we might have missed the boat as far as that goes, or we could, join them in that process. I don't know. These are all discussions for another day. We specifically have rules in our planning scheme, and that may well be tested in this case. How do we determine what the impacts will be? I think the mere physicality of this location is what you have to base your answer to that upon. And I think most councillors here have been and seen the property. So in the balance, I find that there would likely be unreasonable impacts on someone's home, someone who lives there permanently. If they were both rented out, that we wouldn't be here discussing it today. I'll leave it at that. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Walker. Any other contributions around the table? Councillor McMahon, do you wish to conclude?
Thank you. I will obviously leave the decision up to the table. I guess our decision needs to sit around whether we believe that there will be an unreasonable impact on the people at the rear of the property or not. I guess that's what it comes down to. So I shall leave it to the table to decide.
Thank you, Councillor McMahon. Let's put the recommendation to the vote. All those in favour raise their hand. That is Councillor Harris, Councillor Pentridge, Councillor Priest and Councillor Britton. Those councillors against raise their hand. Councillor Gibson, Councillor Walker, Councillor Palmer, Councillor McMahon, Councillor Marsden and Councillor Kai. Therefore, the motion is lost. Therefore, I'm looking for an alternate motion. Councillor Walker.
Thank you, Chair. I stand to move an alternate motion that we refuse this application based primarily on its non-compliance with the acceptable solution under 8.3.2 visitor accommodation, which is not for a strata lot, but is part of a strata scheme where other strata lot within that strata scheme is used for residential use. The performance criteria P2 states the privacy of residents, any likely increase in noise, the residential function of the strata scheme, the location and layout of the strata lots, the extent and nature of any non-residential uses, and any impact, any impact on shared access and common property.
Thank you. So that is moved by Councillor Walker. Is there a seconder? Thank you. Councillor Kai. I'm just going to get some advice. In my experience, it's necessary for us to have something before us to be able to consider for planning matters based on the reasons that the councillor has put forward, whether or not we need some additional time to have that supporting documentation. We'll just take a moment. Councillors, I'm going to suspend the meeting at 2:12 for 10 minutes to allow our planning officers to support our decision making, noting that Councillor Marsden will be departing at 2:40. So I'd like to have this item considered before then. We'll resume in 10 minutes at 2:22. Thank you. Thank you, councillors. We return to the meeting at 2:22, noting that all councillors are present with the exception of Councillor Pentridge, who I expect we'll see soon. Thank you, Councillor Pentridge. We did regardless. So let's please move to Councillor Walker. I'll ask you please to read out the motion, which is now for us on the screen.
You're asking me to read from the screen?
If you're able.
Oh, well, I can see that. That in accordance with sections 51 and 57 of the Land Use Planning and Approvals Act 1993 and the Tasmanian Planning Scheme Launceston, a permit is refused for visitor accommodation, change of use to short-term accommodation at 1/2 Granville Street, West Launceston, on the following grounds. 1, the General Residential Zone Clause 8.3.2, visitor accommodation performance criteria P2, which I did read previously, and that the proposed change, while not referring specifically to any one of those clauses, the proposed change of use will cause unreasonable loss of residential amenity to the long-term residents occupying Unit 2.
Councillor Walker, you're happy with that alternate motion as the mover?
I think that it encapsulates all the sub-clauses in there, so yes, I am.
Thank you. Seconder, are you happy with... Thank you, Councillor Kai, you're happy. Councillor Walker, do you wish to speak to the motion?
Thank you, Chair. Of course, I think I probably made myself fairly clear earlier, and the reasons why I thought that. I will just share a small anecdote. In my humble abode, I live next door to a property that has been used as short-term accommodation. I'm a long-term resident. My neighbour's a long-term resident. We're not on strata title, but nonetheless, I share a boundary. My wall is the boundary to my neighbour's property. That means on occasion that short-term visitors might be warming their car up on a winter's morning at 4 a.m, about 2 metres from my bedroom, where my head lies in my bedroom, I should say. That means people might come home late from a party or an event at 3 a.m. in the morning, speaking loudly, carrying on, enjoying themselves. Now, I don't begrudge that. My neighbour is a good man. He's chosen to do that. I haven't objected to that. It definitely has impacts on my life. It's not a strata title, as I say, and I accept that that is the nature of inner city living to some extent. But when there are provisions in the planning scheme, and this is my point, and I thank you for indulging my little anecdote there, but my point is, when there is provisions within the scheme, I think it is prescient of us to actually explore them further. If this was, and I'm not making suggestions for anyone, but if this was rented out on a more long-term basis, I imagine there's very little that could be objected to. And that might be the simple difference here. But that is not for us to decide today, and I thank you for indulging me.
Thanks, Councillor Walker. Councillor Kai is the seconder.
I agree with what the councillor said. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Kai. Any other contributions around the table? Councillor Walker, other than anecdotes, anything further to close?
Well, there was going to be one more, but no, there's not. I shall close. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll put the motion to the vote. All those in favour raise their hand. That is Councillor Gibson, Walker, Palmer, McMahon, Marsden, Kai and Harris. Those councillors against raise their hand. Councillors Pentridge, Priest and Britton. The motion is carried 7-3. Thank you. We now move to item 11.3 in the agenda. I wish to advise that there was an administrative error identified in the conclusion of the wording of the agenda report for item 11.3 for the item DA 0517/2025 226 Hobart Road, Kings Meadows. The concluding sentence was not amended prior to publication and currently reads that the proposal complies with the planning scheme and is recommended for approval. This wording is incorrect. The correct conclusion should read, it is considered that the proposal does not comply with the planning scheme and it is therefore recommended for refusal. The officer suggests that the assessment recommendation throughout the rest of the report are correct and the error is confined solely to the conclusion wording. And I also understand that the applicants and representatives were notified of that administrative error. We do have a speaker listed. Apologies for the pronunciation. Is it Villy?
Yes, sir.
Great. Please come to the microphone.
Honourable Chairman, Honourable Councillor, distinguished members of this chamber, I'd like to thank you for the opportunity to speak. And as the Chairman said, my name is Villy. And I'd like to start off with saying that I do apologise if I send you too many information before this meeting. And the reason for that is because I want you to see that the whole process was being looked after. And if my understanding, if the process was duly abided by and assessed properly, there will be a different conclusion to that what's showing on the board. And I'd like also to start off my speech today to say that the whole reason why we undertake this DA was there was an understanding and a discussion with council. As you may be aware, there's a lot of clutter of signs in our church. And it's true, it needs to be bring to abide with the planning scheme and need to be not clutter. But, and the sign code clearly said that in order to remove clutter, that the signs in a particular location be replaced by a better sign that could eliminate the others. Secondly, the other issue in that initial discussion was the flooding light that we used to illuminate those signs were shedding lights onto Hobart Road, which create hazard, and the public complain about it. So what does it mean? If we have to address both the floodlight cleared onto Hobart Road and the removal of clutter of signs, we agree in that discussion that the best option is one LED billboard signs to replace the lot. The beauty of LED sign, it is approved for the community zone it's sitting on, and more so, the operation of such signs can be strictly controlled to abide by any planning rule. And what I've shown you on the board there, on the figure 1 and 2, it shows that according to the planning rule, that there is a sensitivity test and offset of 50 meters from the sign to the residential surrounding. And that 50 meter there, if you are within that 50 meter, it must be strictly controlled that you have no impact on the residential zone. And you can see there that the residents that's within the general residential zone facing directly the sign, they're outside the 50 meters. And so we abide by the law for that. In terms of Normanstone Road, you can see that on the figure number 2, that the general residential zone to our zone is minimum 4 meters. And if you go from the center of the sign towards the next residential dwellings, it will be more than that. So the impact on the amenity of residential zone, I would say to the chamber this afternoon, is not impacted according to the rule if it's applied correctly. And secondly, in terms of clutter, the sign that we use, it's there to remove clutter because it's one sign that changes in a given dwelling times, 30 seconds required by the rule. We can go longer than that. And there's something next to it that's changed more than 30 seconds. It's called a traffic light. They changed less than that. But going back to the reason being, and in the illumination of the signs, the technology we have with the sign allows to control that strictly to abide by the rule. And so the reason why I mentioned it, I've sent you all the information. My general belief this afternoon is if a due diligence was done to the process, the chamber will be presented with a different outcome. And also the figure number.
I'm going to conclude you there. I've let you have a good go over time. Yep. So thank you so much, and thank you for the provision of the information.
Thank you.
On both occasions. It's been appreciated. Are there any other additional speakers? There being no other speakers, I'm looking to the table for direction. Councillor Britton, what would you like to do? Like to move the recommendation that's listed in the agenda?
Oh, I'd like to move the amended.
Yep, the refusal. Thank you. Councillor Britton is moving as recommended by officers. Is there someone to second that? Councillor Priest, thank you. Councillor Britton, do you wish to speak?
I will, thank you very much. Look, I've stood here plenty of times and had to approve something because and use the words I'm about to use. We sit as a planning commission, and that is what we're here to do. Unfortunately for the proponent, is that the right word? Yes. As we scroll through here and read, not consistent, relies on performance criteria, not consistent. Irrespective of how anybody feels about the matter, and I believe there may be some who feel a bit different, this does not meet the planning scheme, quite evidently, and therefore, as my role as someone who sits on the planning commission, I cannot approve it today. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Britton, the Planning Authority. Councillor Harris has a question.
Yes, thank you. Just in regard to some of the decisions, I guess, that are being put forward in the recommendation not to approve, there seems to me to be that the sign's too big and therefore we should refuse it. But at no point is there an indication of what is an acceptable sign for a church in a residential or, in fact, a business zone, as this part of Hobart Road actually is. So my question really is, if 4 metres by 3 metres, which is 12 square metres, is too big, would 3 metres by 2 metres, which is 6 square metres, be acceptable? Because clearly some existing schools and churches have LED signs in residential areas that seem to be this size. And so I am curious as to at what point does a sign become too big and therefore increase the visual clutter. I might have some other questions depending on the answer after that.
Thanks, Councillor Harris. The definition and sizing?
It's not appropriate for us to speculate without seeing a proposal, but we can draw some conclusions from other similar signs. For example, a sign was approved at St Thomas More School, if you recall. It was slightly controversial at the time, but ultimately approved, and that is a 0.96 by 0.64 digital screen. So, yeah, a metre by just over half a metre. We have approved a sign similar at the Albert Hall to indicate what's on at the Albert Hall, and that is a 1.4 by 0.84 screen. So those would be similar things that we've determined to be okay to communicate messages from community facilities.
Thanks, Richard. Councillor Harris, any further questions? Councillor Priest, as the seconder, do you wish to speak at this time? Start with a question? Sure.
Yep, thank you, Chair. I just would like to ask the current signs that are erected on the building, the brick wall of the building and the pergola type structure, are they, and also the double facing triangular shaped sign on the lawn, are they currently approved signs? Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Priest. Delete.
The two signs on the building and one on the awning, they're not approved. They don't have planning permits. I couldn't find any other approvals for the triangle shaped in the lawn. I believe it was erected before this planning scheme came into effect. I believe so, but we have to look into that to understand if they have any approval. But I can confirm there is no approvals for other two signs on the building.
Thanks. Delete. Councillor Priest, any further questions?
Thank you for that clarification. So therefore, this is a new sign, and I look forward to hearing if anybody else has got a comment. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Priest. Any other contributions? A question, Councillor Kai?
Yes, so similar to what Councillor Harris was saying, I was just wondering what is considered to be reasonable size. Looking down across the road from where I am, that's a fairly big sign on the wall coming down Brisbane Street. What's the size of that sign that we approved?
So Councillor Kai is referencing the highway, which turns into Brisbane Street,
yes,
just as at the entrance to the city, which is an illuminated sign.
Yeah, one thing that's important to recognise is that this sign is not a billboard. So billboards are generally standard size, 6x3. We categorise them as third-party signs, and they're for the purposes of advertising, commercial advertising. This is a sign specifically to convey information from a community facility to people that use that facility about what might be on at that facility. It's not the same nature of sign, but having said that, the size of that is 6x3. That the illuminated sign replaced a static billboard that was approved quite some time ago.
Right, thank you.
Thanks.
Just one more question.
Of course.
If we were to not approve this sign today, can we at least give the applicant advice or recommendations as to what is reasonable so that they can then maybe apply for a sign that would be recommended for approval?
Thanks, Councillor Kai. Richard, are you able to talk through?
Yeah, absolutely. We could. We'd invite him to contact us. If that was the case today, we would invite the applicant to contact us, and we would do our best to advise him.
And to be clear and to assist Councillor Kai, my expectation would have been that some of those conversations would have occurred. Is that correct? Or is it cut and dry in terms of what's being assessed?
The submission to the application, the proposal, it's a self-explanatory. They know what they're proposing, and they explain what the illumination levels, how it's going to be controlled, what's the size. So we considered and we assessed accordingly, and then we advertised as per the process, and then we had the representations. We determined the final assessment. It's inconsistent, it's incompatible to the streetscape.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Harris, a question?
Yes, just a question. Billy mentioned about a 50-metre line from residential from the sign, and I was just wondering, has that any reference or reality in the planning scheme, or is that something else? I had not heard that before.
So, as you know, the site is in community purpose zone. There is a requirement for external lighting. If you are within 50 meters of a general residential zone, there is a restriction. You can't operate. There is requirement you can't operate between 11 p.m. and 6 a.m. If you are operating just for security lighting, they need to be baffled. In this case, the complaint which was looked into by our compliance department was flood lighting. It was directed to the sign, which is actually spilling outside the boundaries. So in this consideration of the application, the sign doesn't need to be categorized into a use class. Therefore, we haven't considered the zone provisions, which includes the 50-meter setback from a point of the site.
Thanks, Dilip. Any further questions at this time, Councillor Harris? No. Councillor Walker. To speak? Sure.
Thank you. And look, I will support the Council's recommendation to refuse, and as noted around the table, there seems to be a willingness or an encouragement from councillors that negotiations could continue, that a more appropriate size might indeed find that it could gain a recommendation for approval. Not that there's any guarantees of that. I think as a city, we've had issues with illuminated signs, and this isn't the first one and it won't be the last one. There's a couple that have been cited, different sizes, locations, different effects. This one, somewhat closer to residential. I can imagine, yes, regardless of the 50 metres or not, that people would be concerned that they look out their bedroom window or whatever and see it. But that might not be the reason to stop it. The size itself seems to be a big factor, and I can understand people wanting the largest possible sign to advertise their wares, so to speak. And I think it's important, the messaging, that if this is refused, it's not being refused because of the content. It is simply that Launceston is grappling with the idea of modern electronic signage and what is appropriate for our city, what is an appropriate size in the location. And it's as simple as that, really. There might be other alternatives. Indeed, there are existing signs. While they haven't been approved, I imagine there could be a process for getting those approved. They are on private property, and they're not. They've been illuminated by the floodlights. If that part can be sorted, I'm sure those existing signs would have a fair chance of being approved. But that's not the path we're at today. I will follow the officer's recommendation. I will look forward to hearing further discussions about what could be appropriate, and I would also look forward to council formulating more broadly a policy regarding illuminated signage, because it is only something that's going to increase. It is natural that if the technology is available, people would like to use it, and we have to make decisions as a community as to what is appropriate on that level. Do we want to drive down Hobart Road and see 12 similar boards, or do we not? Because as they get approved, it becomes more likely that the next one will be as well. So, interesting questions to answer. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Councillor Walker. Are there any other speakers? Councillor Pentridge.
Well, I've got several concerns. I've listened to all the excuses why we should refuse it. My biggest concern will be that, and I hope that I'll try and limit my comments, that the signs on the church has been there a long, long time. And I'm not altogether comfortable that our objection is it because of the sign, or is it because of the church? I personally believe that everyone has the right. We're going through this Bondi saga, and we're talking about a lot of things there. We are actually living in a situation here at the moment where a church has asked to put a sign on. I personally believe it has the right to advertise as it sees fit. It's their church. If they want a message there, if you don't want to read the message, don't look at it. I don't believe that sign will distract everyone people who don't want to look at it can look the other way. But I believe that these people, and if you look at the folder that they're carrying, have done a fair bit of work on this. And what I'm going to be making sure that, my recommendation to these people would be to take it to appeal Now, if they succeed, then I'm going to ask them more questions on that, and I'm hoping I'm not going to hear what I hear regularly out of this organisation.
Thank you, Councillor Pentridge.
Which is the councillors voted for it.
Thank you. So we appreciate, as always, your contribution. A reminder that the applicant underneath the zoning particulars is able to apply for the sign. You've categorised it in a particular way with regard to their style of business or operation in the community purpose zone. It is very clear that that is not in any way linked to the determination as per the officer's recommendation. So your comments are noted. They're factually incorrect at this point, and any suggestion of otherwise is incorrect. But we note your contribution. Are there any other contributions from around the table? Councillor Harris has a question.
Yes, just a question regarding the developed application. If this were to be approved today, which means we would be voting against the motion as it is presented, and we pass one approving it, and the sign at 4 metres by 3 metres, does the applicant have to install the sign at that size, or in fact could they install a smaller sign?
Dilip.
If we consider alternative motion to issue the permit, they can either go with the proposed sign dimensions, or if they need to come for a minor amendment to amend the dimensions.
So, sorry, Dilip, just again, in terms of can it be smaller than what's applied for?
So just to be clear, we issue a permit approving the sign and we endorse the plans as submitted. Now, the choice for the applicant is to erect the sign as submitted in accordance with the plans. As Dilip mentioned, there is an opportunity at some point to amend those plans, and you can apply for further approval to amend the plans. If you chose to amend the plans to bring it down in size, we would probably support that particularly in this circumstance where there's a very big sign. But that's all hypothetical. If we issue a permit for a sign, we would expect the sign to comply with the plans and as approved.
Thanks, Dilip and Richard. Any further Councillor McMahon.
I'd actually like to move that the motion be put, please.
Thank you. Councillor McMahon has put forward a procedural motion that the motion be put. It's seconded by Councillor Walker. All those in favour of that procedural motion raise their hand. Those against? Councillor Harris, who was next to speak, is against, and so the motion is carried. So let's now move the motion. That is the officer's recommendation that this development application not be granted a DA. All those in favour of supporting the officer's recommendation raise their hand. That is Councillors Gibson, Walker, Palmer, McMahon, Britton, Priest, Kai. Those against raise their hand. Councillors Pentridge and Harris, noting that Councillor Marsden departed the meeting. The motion is carried. Thank you. Council no longer sits as a planning authority. Let's move to item 12 of the agenda. These are the announcements as listed. And if, like me, you would have noted that media announcements are now being included in the listing. Are there any questions regarding the announcements? There being none, let's note them and move to item 13, councillors' reports. Are there any reports from councillors regarding the opportunity to briefly report on activities that have been undertaken in capacity as a representative of the council? Councillor Kai.
Thank you. Okay, so on the 10th of December, we did the final walk for the 16 days of activism. It was truly inspiring to see such a diverse group of people coming together. Police officers, Launceston City Council staff, community groups, local workers on their lunch break, and many others from our community. Everyone's presence was an incredible reminder that our community stands united against gender-based violence. It shows that respect, safety and equality are values close to all of our hearts here in Launceston. On the 17th of December, thanks to Councillor Marston, who's already left, for giving me a lift, we attended the Waverley Primary School Assembly for the premiere of Waverley Shines. This wonderful student-led film project, which is a part of the City of Launceston's Lonnie Connecting Community Group, it really celebrates the spirit of the Waverley community. It was truly inspiring to see young people feel empowered to share stories about where they live, knowing they are respected, seen and appreciated. Waverley Shines is a powerful reminder of how important it is to listen to our young voices and support programs that foster local pride and connection. And a big thank you to Sarah McCormack for her amazing work in that area. On the 18th of December, together with Meg Arwood and Councillor Palmer, we had the honour of presenting the 2025 City of Launceston's Ariane Titmus Swimming Scholarship. The remarkable and resilient Sage Bassano has received outstanding results at the state and national levels and shows incredible dedication and personal commitment to her swimming journey. Balancing training, competitions and additional efforts needed to fund and sustain her growth, it truly reflects her strong work ethics, resilience and maturity. Congratulations again to Sage. On Monday just gone, I was delighted to meet with Consul General of Japan, Mr. Fuyuya. We discussed the delegation's recent visit to Japan, the strength and values of the 60-year Launceston and Ikeda sister city relationship, and shared challenges faced by local governments. We also had wonderful conversations about the importance of student and teacher exchange to deepen cultural understanding and create more opportunities for young people. Mr. Fuyuya acknowledged that Launceston and Ikeda shared one of the strongest sister city relationships in Australia and expressed his eagerness for continued investment in this partnership, which will have lasting social, cultural and educational benefits. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Kai. Appreciate that. And also I think it's worth mentioning that the great work that Sarah McCormack has done in Waverley and other sites around the council will be recognised at an international conference, with Sarah being invited to represent the City of Launceston in India. So we wish her well, and the executive leader, Ali, who is accompanying her, and we thank her for the great efforts that she's put into multiple sites and the impact that's been achieved at those sites. Thanks, Councillor Kai. Any additional councillor reports? Councillor Palmer.
Thank you very much. Acting Chair. Thank you. It's been a very busy time for us all indeed. I would just like to make a few comments. I organised the West Tamar carols, and we had a wonderful sister city relationship with our neighbours, the West Tamar Council. So I'd like to say thank you very much to the team down there and all the local Launceston artists that travelled down to West Tamar to sing for us and dance for us, and all the wonderful people that attended. The weather was somewhat a little bit windy, but it was a wonderful, wonderful event. Also, I officiated at the Lilydale Christmas carols, so we had hundreds of community members attend there, and also lots of Launcestonians attend, which was wonderful, on the footy oval down there. And I'd like to thank the Lilydale Football Club for allowing us to use their oval, which was outstanding. Thank you very much. What else has been happening? The Lilydale District School Assembly, I attended that, which was wonderful. The Waverley Primary School end-of-year assembly, and listened to all the students speak and the different principals, and listened to the way that they spoke about their school and their staff and their amazing students. And just like to commend all the award recipients for everything that they have achieved throughout 2025. Councillor Kai has already made comment on the Ariane Titmus Scholarship, and I'd also like to pay tribute to Sage Bassano for the outstanding athlete that she is, but also not only what she's done in the pool, but also outside the pool. In reading through Sage, her submission, and also interviewing her, it was very evident that she's an outstanding sportswoman. What she does to support her fellow swimmers is outstanding. And I'd just also like to say a big thank you to her family, who every single morning get up at 4 a.m. and drive her to the Launceston Aquatic Centre to help her with her dreams and aspirations, and just an outstanding young woman. I attended the Joseph Cromie 95th birthday celebration, and it don't really need to say too much more about what Joseph Cromie has done in our community. He's an outstanding man, and I just want to pay tribute to him and wish him all the very best for his 95 years. Launceston, Carols in the Park, I attended and did a bit of Santa security once again. And I'd just like to pay tribute to our fellow Councillor Lindy McMahon, for all the work that she's done over the last few years in relation to the Carols, and the team that helped her do that within Council, an outstanding team here that do so much there. And if I can indulge you, my wife Jo Palmer, it was her 25th year of hosting the Carols in the Park, so I'd just like to say congratulations to her. What else have we done? We've attended a special meeting here before Christmas and in the new year. So much has been happening. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Palmer, and I'm sure if the Mayor was here, he too would wish to recognise Councillor McMahon for her outstanding leadership of the Carols and the community members, together with our outstanding staff who went above and beyond. Some of the messaging of Carols got a little lost in the afterglow of the event, but it was an outstanding community social capacity building event. So Councillor McMahon, on behalf of all of us, thank you to you, the staff and the members of the volunteer committee. Councillor McMahon.
Thank you. Just to follow on from the thanks for the Carols, I appreciate that. I just want to formally name some of the people who volunteer their time to make sure that that event is successful, and that is Belinda King, Rebecca Burston, Matthew Purdon, Travis Hennessy, and on the day Ryan Parkinson also helped us out. I also want to formally acknowledge the council staff. It is a massive task bringing that together. And in particular, Danny Barnett and Abby Griffith, who both did an incredible job. So definitely want to thank them for all the work they did, and also Angie Hart, who also plays a big part in ensuring that event comes to fruition. And lastly, to our community for coming along. The weather was not on our side on the day. The rain did hold off until the last part of the evening. And I think that was probably the best part of the evening, where the crowd actually got up off the ground and were dancing in front of the stage in the rain and singing along with those on stage. It was a beautiful end to a great evening. So thank you.
Thanks, Councillor McMahon and CEO. I'm sure you'll pass on to the staff how appreciative we are. Councillor Harris.
Yeah, thank you. I won't go over many of the other ones that others have talked about, such as Waverley Shines, Ravenswood Heights Primary School presentation. I was there also at both the Assembly and their presentation assembly, and the Mowbray Heights Primary School on the 16th of December. And I just want to draw attention to their music program, which is outstanding in that they have a full woodwind, thank you, part of their orchestra, and to see young students, probably from grade 3 to 6, not only their talent with the instruments, but also the offstage use of the other children to bring them on as staff, and that we are absolutely training people who in the future could see themselves up on the stage with Joe in another 10 years at the Carols in the park, or in fact as part of Encore Theatre in the Princess Theatre once that's been redeveloped. So I just wanted to sort of single out that particular one. It was one I've attended for the last couple of years, and I've been very impressed every year by the talent that exists in such a school. Unfortunately, most schools don't have such a music program, and that's to the detriment of our society, I believe. And finally, I also would like to say thank you to our Councillor Lindy McMahon and the events team. They did have some challenges on the night, which was handled very well, and it just shows that the community of Launceston can band together to make things happen. And, we look forward to that, I guess, this Saturday night when we have the Foo Fighters coming and the challenges around having so many people come into our city. But the carols in the park, I left before it rained, so I didn't see the final dancing in the rain, but it certainly was a great night. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Harris. Any other councillors? Councillor Kai, an addendum?
Could I just say a thank you to Joe for giving up his land for the Foo Fighters on Saturday to allow people to park in his car parks. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. That's nice. Councillor Pentragiora was doing those things behind the scenes. It's acknowledged. So thank you. And we also acknowledge Councillor Marsden, who was remiss of me to say assisted in a very special red suit at the carols and in the lead up to Christmas around the community, and that is appreciated. So, CEO, one less thing that you had to do, but we appreciate that Councillor Marsden did that. Great, let's move on. Item 14, questions by councillors. 14.1.1, Councillor Harris's question, bench seat installation at George Street taxi rank. A detailed response is provided there and is further represented by a question that was raised at the AGM. 14.1.2, question on notice received by Councillor Harris, permit requirements for social services. Detailed response is provided there. 14.1.3, Councillor Harris, legal explanation of on-street versus off-street parking infringement discounts. Question from the Deputy Mayor, Councillor Mackenzie, Lindsay Street traffic lights and traffic flow northern outlet. Response provided to those questions. Councillor Gibson, 10 days on the island. The question with regard to us ensuring that the correct information was shared. A response has been provided to correct the record there. Councillor Walker, question received regarding the Foo Fighters and the determination of the contribution. Response has been provided there. Are there any questions on the questions on notice that are provided? No? Let's move to questions without notice by councillors at 14.2. Questions without notice. Councillor Kai.
Thank you. After reading an email from our sister city, Putian, earlier this year, I'm just wondering, will we be starting the Sister City Committee again to continue working and building long-term connections between our sister city communities, not just with Ikeda, but also with our 3 other cities?
Thanks, Councillor Kai. Jane, directed, correct terminology? Strategy Innovation Leader, I've heard you reference the strategic work that's happening behind the scenes or intended to happen with regard to sister cities. Is that something you're able to provide an update on today?
I certainly can, Councillor Gibson, and thank you for your question, Councillor Kai. Following the receipt of the report on Ikeda, there is a recommendation from Council of the next steps that we'll be taking in that space of international agreements, sister cities and friendships, and that is to review our sister city relationships and to report back via a workshop and ultimately to Council on the direction that we can potentially take that. We are currently in the market to recruit our economic development officers, and once we have staff appointed, that is an activity that we will include in our annual plan for 2026-2027 so that councillors can look forward to receiving that in the next financial year when we've got resources and had the opportunity to undertake that. That will cover existing sister city relationships, friendship agreements, and explore potential for the future and what they might look like.
Wonderful, really appreciate that. Councillor Kai?
Yes, so the question is, will we still be having a sister city committee? Not just sister city committee, but also other committees like gorge committees and things like that?
So let's specifically, first of all, have that first point of the question with regard to consideration of a committee for sister cities, if that's something you've turned your mind to at this point.
I understand that the overall committee structure is currently under review and consideration by the councillors, and we will follow on whatever the decision of council might be, and whether that includes the re-establishment of the sister-city relationship, then clearly we will service that, but we'll wait further direction from councillors.
Thanks, Executive Leader. CEO's got has been doing some work and leadership with regard to the alignment of committees and thinking in that space with regard to the strategic plan. Anything further you'd like to add at this point?
No, thank you through the Chair, and thank you, Councillor Kai. As councillors would be aware through numerous discussions at workshop, we are doing some work around committees more broadly and what the structures will look like. Council has made a decision to dissolve, is probably the appropriate word, the Sister City Committee last year in 2025, along with a number of other committees. So in 2026, as we move through that world of committees and what they will look like moving forward, I suspect we'll be able to align Sister City relationships more appropriately then.
Thank you, CEO. Councillor Kai, any further questions?
Yes, I didn't think it was to dissolve the committees. I assumed it was, along with like the transport committees and all that, it was to have a look at what else we can do to make it better and come back to it. That was sort of my understanding, not like totally dissolved.
Councillor Kai, there were some clear committees that were dissolved in the recommendation that was considered by the council, but there was also an agreement that some strategic work into the future to align our committee structures to our strategic plan would be undertaken, and a commitment that that work will come back before councillors. So what you've heard the Executive Leader and the CEO say is that it may be that there is a committee that is a Sister City Committee, or it may be that Sister Cities are incorporated into a committee that looks at things more broadly in terms of a content area or a strategic focus. But the actual mechanics of dissolving committees did occur, and the Sister City Committee was one such casualty.
Right, thank you.
Any further questions around the table? Councillor Preece.
Thank you, Chair. I asked in workshop, I think last week, for just an update on the viewing deck in Park Street. I ventured down there again this week and looked at the pavers that have been disrupted that are outside the security fence. And I'm just wondering if we could have an update on that viewing deck, and also if perhaps the security fencing could be moved out to cover the ruptured tiles or pavers. Thank you.
Executive Leader Chelsea, I'm not sure if you have anything at hand in response to that question, or if we'll take that on. She's not here. We'll take that on. No. Oh, Ali, Executive Leader Ali, only if you are able.
Yeah, that one sits with my team, and I have inquired. They have a plan and budget to amend that, and yes, we'll move the fence.
Great. Apologies. Sorry, I saw some emails last week. Thank you, Ali. We appreciate that. Councillor Preece, anything further? Great. Next, we'll go to Councillor Harris and then Councillor Kai for an addendum.
Thank you. Just in travelling around the north of the state, I noticed both Burnie and Devonport have their city $1 million artworks in place, and I was just wondering the process of where we're at with our new Welcome to Launceston artwork down on the southern outlet, and if we have a time frame when we might see some installation.
Thank you, Councillor Harris. You might ask Executive Leader Ali if you are able, if there's any update, and happy for it to be taken on notice if you'd prefer.
Yeah, the Northern Gateway one I will have to take on notice at this stage. I'll just have to get an update from the consultants.
Wonderful. Thank you, Councillor Harris. Thanks for the question. Any further questions, Councillor Harris? Councillor Kai.
Just a quick one. Last week I walked past the Frederick Street Kindergarten, and there's homeless people living in there. Are we going to put better fencing up to stop them going in?
So that's a multi-pronged question, Councillor Kai. So the first question, CEO, is the status of the Frederick Street site with regard to the fencing and where we're at with that particular site. Executive Leader Chelsea.
Thank you,
Councillor Kai. We are working with, I guess, our project delivery team as well as the tenants of Frederick Street Kindergarten. We have already undertaken significant, I guess, hoarding of the building. We've had this issue there before. We have also worked to improve the fencing there, and that was raised by Councillor Walker at some point last year. We continue to work with the lessee. We know that there are people who are kind of coming and going. We've advised them of the process to raise a customer service request. If there continues to be people on there, we can, through the other executive leader, come up with a trespass order as well. So we're aware of the situation and monitoring with the lessee.
Thanks, Executive Leader. Second part of the question to Executive Leader Ali. Are we aware and able to reach out as per our normal processes, as per our homelessness sleeping rough guide to support our support services who work in this space for those people that Councillor Kai have identified sleeping rough at that site?
Yes, Councillor Kai, we have reached out to the outreach workers and also with TASPOL, and we're just having conversations about how we can secure that area a little bit better and also find supports for those people living rough.
Great. Thank you. Councillor Walker.
Question without notice, if I may, Chair. During the previous week, Council was briefed of a draft master plan for 102 to 106 Lilydale Road by Homes Tasmania, who have the ambition of developing a large site for long-term housing supply needs or land supply needs, similar to the publicly announced rezoning of land out at Kings Meadows that would be for a somewhat similar purpose to release future land sales. How can Council best engage with Homes Tasmania and the state government to maximise these opportunities and prevent any ill-considered effects of expansion of housing areas on existing infrastructure? And indeed, with Homes Tasmania, who have previously employed using alternative pathways to rezone land via state government legislation, does Council have to concede that we should work, I suppose, collaboratively rather than have any misgivings about potential developments?
Thanks, Councillor Walker. Notwithstanding the political component, Executive Leader Chelsea, are you able to talk about the mechanism of the first part of Councillor Walker's question, the mechanism?
Certainly. Unfortunately, I wasn't present for the briefing, but I am across the issues more broadly. Obviously, the state government has powers to develop housing. I would suggest that the first part of this matter is political in terms of advocacy around making sure development, certainly housing developed by Homes Tas, is well supported by infrastructure, and that's not just roads, that's also social infrastructure for the people that might be moving into that area. Officers have certainly provided strong and fearless feedback to Homes Tasmania about our concerns to do with loading in that number of residents into that area, which is already not particularly well serviced. Something that we're exploring as officer collaboration, given the intent of Homes Tasmania, is whether we need to fast track our work around a neighbourhood plan for that suburb. That's something I'll consider with the Senior Leader of City Development. But I certainly believe, as the Chair has pointed out, there is a political element to this as well.
Thanks so much. Following on Councillor Walker's question, and is there an appetite to work in conjunction with a councillor should they wish to put forward a notice of motion with regard to some of that material and the topic and conversations you've already provided response to Homes Tasmania about and on?
Certainly, we can support any councillor who wishes to do that.
Councillor Walker, any further questions?
I think you may have asked them for me, thank you.
Any additional questions around the table? Let's move to item 19, Community Assets and Design. 19.1, Council Submissions, State of Play and Regional Strategic Direction for Northern Tasmanian Regional Land Use Strategy Consultation. Also, note the team had a wonderful pop-up today out the front, which was appreciated, and we thank them for their efforts there. There are no speakers listed to the item. A councillor to take direction of this item. Councillor Harris, as per the recommendation, and seconded by Councillor Walker. Councillor Harris, anything you would like to add to the report that's been provided?
The only question I have for those who undertook the community consultation this morning, have they found anything extra they would like to add from that community consultation before we discuss and approve this?
Thanks so much.
Sorry. Thank you for the question. Nothing further to add from what we heard from the community this morning. There were some just general questions. There is some difficulty around getting some feedback from the community and understanding planning at a regional level. But from what I've heard from the regional coordinator, there has been good feedback so far.
Great. Thank you so much. Councillor Harris.
Yeah, thank you. So this is an important document that we are now going to endorse, the submission that has been prepared for us by our staff on the Northern Tasmanian Regional Land Use Strategy in its review for this year. I think it had a preliminary review in 2021 after being initiated in 2011 from memory, and so this will now be the new document going forward. It is something that is important for the longer term planning of the Northern Tasmania, and it is something that we have had at workshop and had the opportunity to interrogate there. So I hope that everyone has had their chance to have a say on that. It is something that I feel strongly about because I do think it's most important that we do take the opportunity to plan for the future, even if the immediate need is not there. Long-term planning is very important. And as I mentioned at our workshop, whenever I drive on the ring roads around Melbourne, I think about the person who drew that line on the map and said we need to keep this line clear of housing so that we can, at some future day, put a freeway around there. And those types of long-term planning is what this is all about. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Harris. Seconder, Councillor Walker.
Thank you. And while I do stand to endorse our response here, I do need to make note of the changes that have happened most recently. Look, we've been planning for 50, probably 200 years really, for what happens in Northern Tasmania. I can show you a book from the early 1970s where we had huge maps about where railways were going to go and roads and bypasses and all sorts of things. That hasn't changed. What has changed is the fact that Launceston used to be in charge, well, with its surrounding councils, with the Greater Launceston Plan, something that we had more direct input into as a council, as individual councillors, as staff. Now we have a regional scheme sponsored by the state government and certainly something that is administered by state government authorities and funded, as I say, by the state government. And our input is, although as far as a Launceston resident goes, I think very important, it's been somewhat minimised in the process. And yes, it is important to plan for the future, and everyone would agree with that, and everyone would have ideas in regards to that. And I encourage people to respond to the consultation that's happening at the moment. But what I'd like to make also people aware of is that our responsibility and our role in this process has been minimised in that process. And if we feel strongly enough about things as a council, we need to make that voice more known, because at the moment we can make a response, we can make a submission, but we really don't seem to have the necessary authority in the scheme of things any longer to take decisive action. We are very much reliant on the state government in terms of land zoning, in terms of state roads, traffic management, a whole range and raft of things. Heritage, the list goes on and on really, where state government has taken an increasing role. And that may be a good thing, That remains to be seen and experienced as far as residents of northern Tasmania go. The proof shall certainly be in the pudding. But I will say that the people around this table and the people in this room have Launceston's interest at heart, and if we can find ways to leverage and have a greater influence over outcomes for the long-term benefit of northern Tasmania, then Launceston should take those opportunities at every stage. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Walker. Are there any other contributions from around the table? Councillor Harris, do you wish to conclude? Let's put the recommendation to the vote. All those in favour of endorsing the submission and noting that this forms part of Phase 1 consultation into the Northern Tasmanian Regional Land Use Strategy, please raise their hand. Those against? That's all councillors present with the exception of Councillor Pentridge, who is against. Therefore, the motion is carried. Can I thank Claire, you, Fenton, Richard and Chelsea, together with your teams, for the great work that's happening in that space. It's appreciated. Let's move on, please, to Delivery and Performance Directorate team. 20.1 Budget Amendment. There are no speakers listed. Someone to move. Apologies. Councillor McMahon has moved the item and it's seconded by Councillor Harris. We welcome Acting Executive Leader Natasha to the front. Great to have you with us. Councillor McMahon.
Thank you, Chair. As we can see, it's fairly self-explanatory. We're moving money from the actual programs to the project funds to complete and facilitate works that have been scheduled or completed. It's fairly straightforward.
Thank you, Councillor McMahon. Councillor Harris as the seconder.
Just a question, if I may, in regard to the line marking program, the $100,000. Is that for just the paying of a contractor to be doing our line marking, or are we in fact looking at bringing the line marking back into house as such and having our own line marking machine?
Thanks, Councillor Harris. We'll take that one, I think, on notice with regard to the specifics of line marking. Any further questions, Councillor Harris? No. Did you wish to speak as the second or anything further? Any councillor wish to raise a question or speak? Councillor Walker.
To speak, thank you, Chair. Just briefly, I think it's interesting that some of the questions from the gallery today might have been answered with this item and the next item. Certainly there is work, money being transferred to be spent on work at the Gorge, previous Gorge restaurant building, the Gorge Cottage you might call it, I'm not sure. And likewise, there is a monthly assessment of the status of the budget in an upcoming item. So interesting that those questions were asked, but are well and truly contained in the agenda.
Absolutely. Thanks, Councillor Walker. Question from Councillor Priest.
Thank you, Chair. Just in relation to the Blue Cafe works, that capital project, in the paragraph below the first table on page 95, it says reinstatement of external areas in relation to Blue Cafe. Is that any external reinstatement of the bitumen to the northern side of Blue Cafe included in that item? Thank you.
Great question. Executive Leader Chelsea.
Unfortunately, I don't have that level of detail. We can take that on notice.
Thanks so much. Thanks, Councillor Priest. Any further questions or speakers to the item? There being none, Councillor McMahon, do you wish to close? No. Let's put the motion to the vote. All those in favour, raise their hand. That is all councillors present. The motion is carried. Let's move to 20.2. There are no speakers listed. Someone to move that we note the monthly financial performance report outlining both capital and operational results for the period ending 30 November 2025. It's moved by Councillor Walker. The seconder, Councillor Harris. Thank you. Councillor Walker.
People are welcome to peruse at their leisure. The monthly report's there, and I will note this is an improvement on years gone by in terms of reportage of council expenditure and the operational result there from November 2025. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Walker. And you're right, I was remiss in directing the member of the public to this exact point in the agenda today, but we'll do that in our follow-up. Councillor Harris is the seconder. Any councillor wishing to speak or raise a question with regard to the monthlies? Councillor Walker to conclude? No. Let's put the motion to the vote. All those in favour raise their hand. That is all councillors present. The motion is carried. 20.3 Council car park arrangements for the Foo Fighters concert in January 2026. That council approves the waiver of parking fees at Patterson Street East, Patterson Street West multi-storey car parks from 3:30 p.m. on Saturday until 10 a.m. on Sunday. Elizabeth Street multi-storey car park from 3:30 on Saturday until 10:30 on Sunday, and Invermay Road Inveresk car park from 12 through to 5 on Saturday in support of the council-sponsored Foo Fighters event. Notes that access to these car parks will be provided during this after-hour period. And of course, just to note, the Inveresk reference is the one this end, not the Stadiums Tasmania operated one at the other end. It is moved by Councillor Britton, gearing up for the Foo Fighters in all areas of his life this weekend. Councillor Harris has seconded the motion. Councillor Britton.
Thank you. I don't have too much to say other than I think it's quite funny that we needed 11 pages to justify this.
I beg your pardon. I'm so sorry. It's remiss of me. Mr. Smith, you are listed at 20.3 as wishing to speak to this item. Councillor Britton, if I could just ask you to take a seat. Mr. Smith, I'm sorry. Remiss of me. Thank you so much. Over to you.
My name is Robin Smith. This 4,000 word, as it was said by two officers, is a report, but it doesn't look at certain things you would have hoped it done. The first to mind is security overnight. The second is the other car parks that council owns and other car parks that are privately owned in the area that are closer than these. So the Gasworks is 300 parking bays. That's less than 500 metres away. That's not considered. CH Smith, which is also owned by council, that's not considered. That is 1,000 metres away, and both of those are closer to the stadium than the ones proposed. The strange thing I find here is this. It was a decision of council to give an exclusive licence agreement to Stadiums Tasmania for the car park. The event management, having use of the area, have decided themselves to use those 850 bays for vehicles that are of their own choosing. It's not council's decision they're not available. It's the nature of the size of the event, excellent as it is and good as it will be for the city. I feel that for the small fee of $2, if that money were to be taken and the car parks, you were considering, I think it was 18 and a half hours for the paltry sum of $2. If that $2 were collected, it could be used to pay for security, enhanced security, because of the value of the vehicles, the number of vehicles, and potentially, unwisely, things that might be left inside the vehicles due to the different nature of their travelling to the event. It says here, it is noted that officers will not be in attendance. Parking officers will not be rostered during the event. So I take it these three car parks will be completely open to the public through the night with no one in attendance. We remember Boxing Day 2023, the trouble we had, we couldn't open the car parks at all because there was a speaker broken, they couldn't communicate. Council is concerned about reputational risk and public expectations that they can't park at the event. I don't think that should be such a consideration. I would say the security of the vehicles is more important. And I think far worse, if you're concerned about the reputational risk of people not being able to park there, I think if a car were broken into in the car park, that would be certainly front page of the paper the next day, and that would not be desirable, not for the council or the businesses, and we're hoping to get a reputation of being available to cater to those people. So perhaps an alternative where you charge and had a dedicated security officer that was driving around those through the night. I understand there is security on call, but that's not exactly the same as having a monitored patrol. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr Smith, and to Councillor may choose to ask questions about the regular patrolling that occurs in our council car parks. That could be answered as part of their consideration of this item. So let's move to the table. The mover is Councillor Britton.
Thank you. Could I ask just one quick question before I do talk? Do we offer any security in any of our car parks at the moment, currently, at all?
Thank you so much. Acting Team Executive Leader Natasha.
Thank you very much, Councillor Britton, for your question, and for Robin Smith for your question as well regarding the item. Yes, we do provide security for our car park services. It is part of a regular patrol that does happen as part of standard services.
There you go. I did not know that. Fantastic. But nonetheless, look, I'll start where I said. I personally don't think we need 11 pages to justify this. I wrote some names down. If we had the Rolling Stones coming in February, Green Day coming in March, Eminem and Kiss coming in June, I believe the city probably would need to come up with a little bit of a better plan of how we manage these sorts of things. But ultimately, we are about to have the biggest concert in Tasmanian history. I understand there's plenty of different views, but I believe the city should just get behind it and do all we can to make sure that it is a roaring success. If I leave my car anywhere outside of my own, I don't have a garage, but my own driveway, I'm leaving it there, and I understand that there's a risk. And I think, once again, in this one-off situation, that's just what people are going to have to do. And I believe most people, if not all of them, who are going to leave their car there understand that risk, and I'm all for it. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Britton. Seconder of the motion, Councillor Harris.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Chairman. Acting Chairman. Yes, the councillors' car parks are a very important part of what will be the experience for Foo Fighter concert goers. But as mentioned in the report, the fact that some of the closest car parks will be unavailable is why we have necessitated thinking outside the square and opening up Patterson Street, East and West and Elizabeth Street to free use to encourage a good outcome for those people who may come to visit our city to see the concert and then go home, whether they drive home after 2 o'clock in the morning or whether they wait till 10 a.m. in the morning. That is a decision that this allows, and for those people to do it without then perhaps impacting those who would normally use those car parks on a Sunday. So I think it's a very good thing, and as mentioned before, I do thank the owners of the Glebe Farm for their provision of access to their land to enable additional car parking, because we will have probably somewhere between 7,000 to 10,000 cars based on people arriving at a concert of 25,000 that will need to be parked somewhere in our city. And that's much more than we have on a normal workday. And that is why we need to look outside the square. Things like the Churchill Park car park for being used is a good example of that. But it is also why it's very necessary for us to consider having the Glebe Farm to supplement what we can do. And I look forward to a very good day on Saturday. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Harris as the seconder. Anyone else to speak to the item? Councillor Britton, do you wish to close?
No, thank you.
All those in favour of the recommendation, please raise their hand. That is all councillors present. The motion is carried unanimously. Thank you. And can I take this opportunity to thank our staff, both those who authored that item and others more broadly across the organisation for their advocacy and their work regarding the Foo Fighters. we've gone above and beyond and really stepped up. So that is appreciated. Let's go to strategy and innovation. 21.1, there's no need for me to vacate because simply the motion is to receive the response from the Department of State Growth dated the 9th of December in response to a question on notice that I had asked. Someone please to move the recommendation. Councillor Palmer has moved. Seconder, Councillor Britton. Councillor Palmer, do you wish to speak? No, thank you. Councillor Britton, do you wish to speak? Does any councillor wish to speak? There being no contributions, let's put the motion to the vote. All those in favour raise their hand. That's all councillors present. The motion is carried. 22, Chief Executive Officer Network. 22.1, status report on council decisions as at the 15th of January. The council receives the status report on our council decisions as at the 15th of January. Someone to move said item. I'm just checking. Mr. Smith, note you're further down. Councillor McMahon has moved. Thank you. A seconder, Councillor Britton. Councillor McMahon, do you wish to speak to the item? No. Councillor Britton, does any councillor wish to speak to 22.1? There being no contributions, let's put the motion to the vote. All those in favour raise their hand. That is carried unanimously. 22.2, status report on notices of motions as at the 15th of January. Receive the status report on our notices of motions. Someone to move that we receive it. Councillor McMahon has moved. Councillor Palmer has seconded. Councillor McMahon, do you wish to speak? Councillor Palmer, do you wish to speak? Does any councillor wish to speak to this item? There being no contributions, we'll put the recommendation to the vote. All those in favour raise their hand. That is carried unanimously. We now move to 22.3, notices of motion from the annual general meeting. The first is from Robin Smith, the public seat at Taxi Rank in George Street. I alluded to this previously, that council resolves to install a public seat at the Taxi Rank in George Street, Launceston. Now, Mr. Smith, can I check? I've got you listed to speak just to the early discount provision. Is that correct? Do you wish to speak?
Yes, only to observe. Thank you.
Okay, sure. Someone to move? Thank you. Councillor Harris has moved. Someone to second? Councillor Walker. Thank you. Councillor Harris, do you wish to speak?
Just briefly, that we received this motion or suggestion from Robin Smith at our annual general meeting to install a bench seat at the Taxi Rank. In the past, there had been one there. There was a response to my question as to where it might be suitably located now that things have changed from when the other seat was removed. And we now are saying that let's install a new seat as marked on the appropriate plan. And I think that would be well received by those who use taxis. And that's really about it. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Councillor Harris. Councillor Walker.
I know we don't have an officer in the seat. I know the location that it's marked, I know we've got that homage to the brickworks in a similar location which was sort of designed semi as a seat. I just can't quite locate it in relation to the photo. I was hoping someone could explain that, but perhaps not. I'll go for a walk around there myself. Nonetheless, support the process. The officers have looked at the site, acknowledge that there's a narrowing of the street where the taxi rank is proper, that this seat would be mere metres away from that location. I think that whole general area at the end of an arcade there is... I don't think there's any other seating in that bit of an arcade. I presume that is all council land, but it might be part of York Park, York Square, I'm not sure, where our council land ends in that little alleyway. Nonetheless, if this is the best solution, then so be it. That's what's recommended. I accept that. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Walker. Any other contributions with regard to 22.3? There being none, Councillor Harris, do you wish to close? Let's put the recommendation to the vote. All those in favour raise their hand. That is all councillors present, carried unanimously. Thank you. 22.4, Mr Smith, have you listed to speak to this one, the annual general meeting making of a bylaw concerning early discount provisions for parking infringements?
Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Just Chair. Yep.
Support, I would ask to support this. Just to be clear, and anything I say today really relates to the legal advice in the most. And I have the greatest respect for council officers, and this is, when an officer says something, I take it as given, as I understand you do. As with the parking, when you say there are security patrols in the car parks at 3 o'clock in the morning, I accept that if you say so. If you say here that this is contrary to law, and this has been something that's appeared over the last 2 and something years, that it's contrary to law, I have to accept it. However, I have my own version of reality and my own interpretation of the law, but I am no lawyer profess. But it's clear when it says, again and again, this is contrary to law. Now, in January 2025, the legal advice was that it not could be carried into law. Now, that was at the first meeting after the AGM, which was the first that the rules applied to. The drafting and the appearance at the annual general meeting prior to that was not subject to those conditions. It was a different meeting. It had no powers in itself. It merely was an indication that it would turn up, and then from that point on being subject. So it was unfortunate that at that meeting said you cannot consider this because it is not one that be carried into law. So that, with respect to the officer's recommendation, is not the case. The same appears in this, and it appears, forgive me if I'm wrong, but the officers don't realise that Councillor Walker suggested a change that this would be now considered in the future, not resolved to make, which is the whole idea. Either way, there are 3 bodies of dot points of legal advice. It says relying upon a reference to an existing law means it can't be made. Now, my understanding as the layperson, when I read, when a bylaw is made, as this one was from 2013 and then became 2023, it replaces it. So a minute, thank you.
I'll allow you an extension. Please continue.
Thank you. It has, it actually, part of the process of the law making is to replace one with another, and that is something set. Back to the basic of the law, still hasn't really been proved why a vehicle infringed on a street in Launceston would have a lesser infringement price than one that was in a car park. I just can't see, still it hasn't been proved to me why you wouldn't graduate the fines in those car parks, particularly as they are a cheaper car park. Some of them are as little as $1 something for 90 minutes. And again, back to the legal aspects, there are no public consultation requirements for this minor change, as I understand. That was legal advice. And again, it says it was this removing the graduation was something consistent with the approach taken by other Tasmanian councils. And that, as I understand, Burnie, Devonport, Hobart and Queenstown all have the graduated system for the similar offences. So I would question that, not that I take issue with the officer, but I thank you for your time.
Thanks, Mr Smith. And I want to say at the outset, your advocacy for the CBD is appreciated, and we do really acknowledge your work and thank you for it. Looking for someone to direct the conversation and the way that we head with regard to a motion of some sort. Councillor Kai, what are you moving?
I'll move the motion to consider it.
Great, thank you. So Councillor Kai is moving as listed. Someone to second? Question? Sure, Councillor Walker, thank you. So it's been moved by Councillor Kai, Councillor Walker. Councillor Walker has a question.
Well, I'm just confused between the motion, which is to consider a notice of motion, and a recommendation that we consider making a new bylaw, and then in the report that council does not recommend. Where are we? Officers' comments, the motion should not be supported for several reasons, as detailed below. So we're moving a motion to consider approving or, creating by law, and yet there's a recommendation in there which is also... I'm just trying to get my head around, because I'm clear that I am moving the original motion to consider the bylaw, which I will speak to in a minute.
Thanks. So procedurally, it's my understanding, CEO, correct me if I'm wrong, at the meeting immediately following any annual general meeting of the a local government area, any motions that are passed at that meeting then need to be considered by the council.
Yes.
Yep. And then they will duly come back with regard to what's been reported, and that is the difference. So when the report is actually considered by the council, it's suggested at this time that it will be different to what was passed at the annual general meeting. CEO, is that correct? So legislatively, all we're doing really is retabling what was considered at that meeting in the format that it was considered in, now with the added legal and officer comments to support that decision making. So I guess the clarity question that is needed is the recommendation correct that we're considering today? So the motion is that council considers to make a new bylaw in the terms of the current parking facilities bylaw, etc., etc., etc. That is as was put forward by Mr. Smith at the meeting, correct? And as passed by the members present at the meeting, correct? Now, the motion that we're being asked to consider is the same. So is that correct? Duncan, legal.
Hi. I've just gone back through the annual general meeting, and it appears the intent of Mr. Smith was for the matter to be considered. If it was then accepted, then a future item would come back to council for it to form the intention to do so. So at an officer level, my reading of the situation is, certainly on my part, there's been a misunderstanding of what Mr. Smith was asking, and that the motion is not for council to today form that intention, but to consider it.
Thank you.
To consider forming that intention at a later date.
Thank you. Councillor Walker, are there any further questions around that? It is a little, I think we just need some clarity on it. So we've been led to believe that the report that will come back will probably indicate that we can't do it for these reasons. However, because the motion was passed, that's the body of work that's been asked of us, and that is what we are considering in this motion. Is that correct? Yep. Councillor Harris has a question.
Yes, my question was just in the word about consider, because I would have thought that the consideration would have been for council officers to do various research and come back to perhaps a workshop before we came to the council meeting to consider the actual motion, so that we could debate it and be educated about the process within the workshop process rather than in the meeting process. So this is not what I was expecting. So from that point of view, I would be looking to understand what the options could be. We could either defeat this motion, we could lay it on the table to enable that consultation to occur in a workshop, and what would be the effect of either of those options, or any other option you may be able to give me.
CEO.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Councillor Harris. Just to be clear on a couple of things, I think, to give the table some clarity here. As the Chair has pointed out procedurally, we are required, obviously, to represent the motion which Council has passed at its AGM. You can appreciate the AGM being held over Christmas and, of course, closure periods and so forth. So time operates against us quite significantly over that period. So the ability to be able to prepare more detailed information can be problematic over that period of time. I must stress, any proposed change to a bylaw is not a simple process. It's not the sort of thing that our legal department can just churn out in a week. It's quite resource intensive and takes a number of stakeholders, particularly the state government, not just council. What I would encourage members to think about is the conversations that we have already had around parking holistically at a number of council workshops in 2025. You would all already be aware and hopefully remember that we have advised that our parking team is already working through a broader parking review at a number of sites, not just on street or off street, looking at the CBD and out of CBD and where we either currently charge for parking or don't charge for parking, for example. That is consistent with your adopted strategic plan. Your adopted strategic plan also says that you would like Launceston to be a less car-reliant city and enhance walking and riding and public transport in its broad form. What's being proposed could reasonably be argued in contradiction to that, because as you've been advised at workshop, you have policy mechanisms at your disposal to be able to use to change behaviour. And we know that this is not going to happen overnight. And certain policies can be implemented, such as parking, for example. We've all discussed should the first hour be free, and then subsequently increasing the pricing after that to make cars move in and out. All of these are the things that our team are currently considering in a broader review of parking, which could ultimately lead to a broader change of the bylaws. So I'd encourage us to do it once and do it properly, as opposed to changing little pieces as we move forward. The proposal is not a bad proposal. From a policy perspective, my advice to council would be that it contradicts trying to achieve what we're trying to achieve in less cars in the city. What we don't want to be doing is providing a benefit or a perceived benefit to those that are parking and maybe not parking correctly within the CBD. What we should be doing is finding mechanisms to encourage people to ride their bike in the CBD or to catch a bus into the CBD or use off-street car parking mechanisms to support retailers and those that work within the CBD.
Thanks, CEO. Councillor Harris, you have moved the item. Do you wish to...
No, Kai.
Sorry, I beg your pardon. Councillor Kai. I beg your pardon. Seconder is Councillor Walker. Councillor Kai, do you wish to speak to the item?
I actually have a question because we're going back quite a few years when all this started, when we all moved a motion to increase the parking infringements by 39%, which then ended up losing the discount on early payment discounts. Now, the question I have was, did we lose the discount on street parking or was it off-street parking? Because one still had the discount, early payment discount, while the other one didn't. And something that we looked at was the inconsistency of one yes and one no. Could you remind me which one still had the discount and which one didn't?
Yeah, on-street paid parking still has a discount mechanism.
So on-street has a discount, but off-street doesn't have the discount.
Correct.
But we're trying to encourage people to park off-street though, aren't we? Like, I thought we were trying to encourage people to park off-street and then there's there's a, how do you call it? Then the cars on street can move in and out more frequently or more cars get through. I'm just a little bit confused here, sorry.
Thank you. So your question's been answered. While you clarify your thoughts around what your next question needs to be, I'll move to Councillor Britton.
Thank you.
Thank you. Just to speak, look, I agree with what...
No, sorry, I thought it was a question.
It was a question.
It wasn't? Yep. Councillor, let's go. Councillor Kai, do you wish to speak or are you still formulating some questions? What would you like to do?
I'm trying to... sorry I wasn't here at the annual general meeting, so I didn't quite know what happened, but I looked at this notice of motion, which was very similar to something that I was going to do not long after...
The introduction?
After the bylaw, but we were told that it was going to take 18 months to 2 years for anything to happen. So in the meantime, we've had the parking team come to do workshops and look at other alternatives that could happen almost immediately, which is a grace period, while we work on getting the bylaw back in, unless I misunderstood it.
I think, okay, I'll take that as a contribution. With a question at the end, was it the intent of the work undertaken that suggested that council was moving towards the reintroduction of any discount off street, or was that not the direction? I think we landed, Councillor Kai, that it was your wish but wasn't able to be facilitated for the reasons that have been mentioned. Councillor Walker as the seconder.
There we go. Now, thank you, through you, Chair, to our constituent, Mr Smith, for bringing this to the annual general meeting and therefore for this motion to proceed to this table today. I thank you. I'm going to rename Pandora's box Robin Dora's box, because I think that he has definitely opened that particular one, which is, for us, parking and parking fees and parking fines and all the associated policies that go around it. And I know that the CEO mentioned that, you know, it might be in contradiction to an existing policy of wanting to reduce reliance on cars, but again, you might find that it's also congruent with other policies. So, you know, that argument is yet to be had. What we have before us here is just an acceptance that this motion that was put forward by Mr Smith for council to consider, and remember, I did amend his motion to add the word consider rather than that council does do this, that council considers doing this, is all that we're asking today. We're asking that we continue this process to consider what would be required for council to introduce this type of scheme where people could receive a reduction in those fees. So, and as the mover of the motion has said, you know, they did consider moving such a motion themselves. Well, we can all say that we considered moving a motion ourselves, but we didn't. Mr Smith, through you, Chair, did. So here we are. And yes, it might mean that there's a cascading effect, that other bylaws are now contradicted and need to be changed too. And these are the things we have to understand in that process. And I would, you know, encourage council now to deal with something that I think has become a legacy for this council over the last 3 or 4 years, probably going back even further really, for us to once and for all take the bit by the teeth and, that's the saying, yeah, and really get to the bottom of what we're going to have to do to implement these. I think everyone at this table, and I'm sure everyone in the general public, would like to see that discount applied if possible. I don't think it is necessarily against policy. It certainly supports the idea of making parking, you know, for whatever reason, if someone ends up with a fine or whatever, more affordable. And you could argue, you know, in terms of that someone who doesn't have the wherewithal necessarily to pay a large fine has an option, you know, of early release, so to speak, where they can get a reduction. Anyway, we digress too much, I think. What we do today, thank you, please don't put the motion, thank you. What I say is, today we just progress this one step further. We say to our legal team and to our executive, we would like to keep pursuing this. We would like to continue considering this. What is this going to take? And let's hope that, you know, in the intervening months before this council goes to election in October, that we can have a resolution put to this table where we understand the processes, because as is also mentioned, bylaws aren't changed that easily. We have to be consistent, but we have to encapsulate all the things, including our constituents' thoughts, including this table's thoughts, including our officers' thoughts in what we recommend to the Planning Commission if we were to change, not Planning Commission, to the state local government office, if we wish to change those bylaws. And that's an involved process, but I don't think we can sit back and say, oh, it might contradict other bylaws and therefore we shouldn't do it. I think in the word consider, that is all included. By considering the changes, we're considering all the implications. Thank you.
CEO.
Thank you, Chair. Just to add to Councillor Walker's comments and broader comments at the table, I would encourage you to think about the language in the recommendation, and as I've said before, around the review that's already taking place and any diversion of resources that may go from that process to this process. So I'd rather it be one process and we do it right and we do it well, as opposed to doing two. The word consider is quite ambiguous, equally. Considers to me could be we've considered it but no, and to you it could be we've considered it but yes. So I would be a bit more definitive, and I think that's fair to the community equally, so that they're very clear on what it is we're looking to do and why we're looking to do it. And I think one statement that probably needs to be made, and as blunt as this may sound, and probably best coming from me, is remembering here we're talking about applying a discount to someone who has broken the law. If someone paid the parking, they wouldn't get the infringement. And if they pay the parking, we get the revenue and it makes life easier for us. So what we're doing here is proposing, which we do presently, for our off-street parking. So yes, we do have an anomaly that exists and maybe we should look to remove that discount. Who knows? That's a decision for you. But simply put, if people pay the parking, they won't get an infringement. So essentially, and I know this sounds blunt, what we're actually doing is proposing to give someone a benefit for breaking the law.
Thank you, CEO. Question from Councillor Britton. There's a question mark in my mind. Councillor Britton to speak.
Thank you very much. We have all sat in multiple workshops, had multiple special, whatever the consultants come in. We have multiple plans, a new strategy. We all sat around tables and agreed that that is the direction we wanted to go in. Then we get the chance, and that's what this is. This is a chance to have a feel-good story where we all look like heroes. Sorry, I don't want to support it. I think it's a waste of council time, and it is absolutely against everything and every strategy that we have put in place and done over the last 12 or 18 months. Mr. Smith, I understand, man, you are not agreeing much on parking today, and I'm sorry. But the public and everybody else are not privy to those meetings. They are not privy to that information that we receive. And it's up to us to make the decisions to make sure that those strategies are done. And like I said, I don't need to go to the newspaper tomorrow or to go and tell anyone else, oh, guess what, guys, we brought back the discounts. We got rid of them for a reason. We have a plan, we have a strategy, and I think, to be honest, if people aren't big and bold enough to come out and just say, no, that is not in our strategy, no, that does not align with our vision, no, then what's the point of having one? And I've probably had to learn a bit in that space, and this might be me passing the test, but no, I do not agree with it. I think it's a waste of council time. Not to be disrespectful, but I think it is absolutely, totally does not align with our plan, does not align with our strategy, does not align with the hours of workshops that we've had. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor. Councillor McMahon.
Thank you. So we have been recommended by our officer to refuse this motion based on a lot of information and things that we've decided on previously. Our CEO has sat there and told us that we are in a process of changing the parking. So why would we throw a spanner in the works while we're halfway through that and go, let's change a bylaw that potentially we're going to change again in another 6 months, 12 months, whenever it is. I think we're just creating a lot of work, a lot of unnecessary angst amongst the staff as well, because they are trying to come up with some really feasible alternatives for parking, and we have sat through many workshops where we have heard some great ideas that they have put on the table, and I think we need to allow them the time to actually come up with a plan for our parking that potentially could work out better than what we've got in front of us right now. So for me, I will not be supporting that we consider this new bylaw. Thank you.
Are there any other contributions from around the table? Councillor High, do you wish to close? Sorry, Councillor Entry.
In the interest of not doing what we've said in the past, which is waste time, but we seem to be pretty good at that. My understanding was that Councillor Kai made a very valid point, that if we're going to give a discount to people who are parking on the street, yet not give a discount to people in the car parks, and my understanding was what Councillor Kai was trying to say, wouldn't we be better off to encourage people to move on quickly in the streets and use longer time parking in the car parks, and therefore create more vacancies in the streets by people quickly moving on. So try and encourage people to move quicker in the streets, and if they're going to be a bit longer, park in the multi-storey car parks. But I'm not sure where we've gone from there. I think it's time for a drink. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Pentridge. Any other speakers before Councillor Kai closes? Councillor Kai.
Thank you. Councillor Britton said that we got rid of it for a reason. Can I just remind everyone that when we voted the 39% increase on the infringement, we were not informed that the discount was going to be gone with it. We found out afterwards, and at the time...
No, Councillor Kai, I'm sorry, I must stop you there to correct the record. That it was remiss of councillors not to fully understand the report that was presented to us. It wasn't the officers who provided error, so I must correct that point, as I have done previously. It was remiss of us to not fully understand the implications of our decision making.
So, yeah, but I still think we should consider this while we're doing the rest of the car parking strategic plans that we have. Can we still have this considered so that we could have this consistency of discounts for both on-street and off-street parking, so there isn't one and not the other?
Thank you. We'll finish with that rhetorical question as we put the motion to the vote. That is, that Council considers to make a new bylaw with all the attachments and reasons listed. All those in favour raise their hand. That is Councillor Walker, Councillor Kai and Councillor Pentridge. Those against, Councillors Gibson, Palmer, McMahon, Britton, Priest and Harris. It is therefore lost, notwithstanding the strategic work that continues in the parking space. Thank you. Before we close the meeting, 3 things. The first thing I would like to say is we look forward to welcoming new citizens tomorrow when the Mayor presides over the citizenship ceremony at the Albert Hall, which is exciting, at 10 a.m, and we thank our staff for the work that has gone into that. The second is to say that in 2 days, Launceston is going to have one of those times like these moments. We've waited all my life for this, and we're ready to run in and learn to fly. No pretenders here as we welcome the Foo Fighters and an expected 24,000 patrons to Lonnie. Even our monkeys are on standby, ready to throw a ceremonial monkey wrench and give the Foo Fighters the best of you, or the best of us, in Launceston. So let's make it ever long. We look forward to the economic and social benefits that will flow through our city. We welcome musicians, crew and visitors as Launceston is on show for the next couple of days. And we look forward to all that that will bring from a social, economic perspective. And finally, thanks for your support today. I guess if we've ever wondered what resilience looks like, perhaps this has been a display of it. The meeting is closed. Thank you.